Chapter 221, Welcome to Bai Gu Mountain. Bai clan leader's face looked extremely dark. She had understood everything. At first she was hesitant, but after seeing the image in the colorful smoke, only an idiot would not understand what had happened. Bai clan leader was no idiot, in fact she was wiser than ordinary people. In Fang Yuan's previous life, she was the one who led Bai clan on the resettlement, and set the foundation for the next generation's prosperity. Damn it! How could this happen? Those two scoundrels were actually demonic Gu masters. They are too good at acting. Clan leader, the two young masters are in their hands, what do we do? In the tent, the other Gu masters were panicking when they looked at this scene. The situation was terrible. Fang Yuan was holding the two young masters hostage, and caused everyone to be cautious in their actions. Bai clan leader forced herself to calm down. She was the birth mother of Bai Hua and Bai Sheng, her worry and anxiety far surpassed the others. However, as someone in power, she had to have her strengths. Other than her identity as a mother, she was also the clan leader. She first ordered her subordinates to release Tai Dao Ku. We were wrong about you, Tai clan's warrior, I apologize to you here. She stood up and bowed with a sincere expression. Tai Dao Ku snorted, although he was extremely displeased, he admired Bai clan leader's resolve. After all, he was only a prisoner now, his life and death could have been decided merely at her thought. He gritted his teeth and tried to stand up, but because his body was extremely weak, even this action was taxing on him. Come, bring the Tai clan guest to his seat. Bai clan leader instructed. Tai Dao Ku sat down, fixing his gaze at the colorful smoke. His gaze seemed to be on fire when he looked at Fang Yuan and Bai Ningbing, causing others to look away. These two are the demonic Gu masters who escaped Qingmao Mountain. That explosion trap was set by them. Young Master Tai Ao Tian's death, the ones I am pursuing, are these two youngsters. Tai Dao Ku etched Bai and Fang's appearances and their body shapes into his mind. No, it might not be them, this could all be a misunderstanding. Tai Dao Ku thought of another possibility. He was upright, and never killed an innocent. Regardless, I have to confirm it myself. If they aren't, I will pursue the true criminals. If they are, I shall cripple these two rascals' apertures and tear them to pieces. Thinking so, he spoke, Bai clan leader, the matter at hand is to arrest these two scoundrels, as well as saving your clan's two young masters. Tai clan warrior, what do you have to advise me? Bai clan leader wanted to get some useful information from Tai Dao Ku. But she was destined to be disappointed. Tai Dao Ku shook his head, smiling bitterly. In the cave, swords were brandished. All of you, get out, do you want me to repeat myself again? Fang Yuan threatened in a cold snicker. Fang Zheng, what are you doing? What is going on? Why are you holding the two young masters hostage? Bai Lian, Bai Sheng and the others were tongue-tied, they thought he had found the spirit spring, but everything happened in a flash. Who would have thought that Fang Yuan would suddenly go crazy and kidnap the two young masters? Whoosh! 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 Three figures suddenly appeared. Fang Zheng, you dare to hold our clan's young masters hostage? How dare you, your crime is unforgivable. Release them, and we may spare you your life. Fang Zheng, release them now, and come back with us, we will let you leave safely. The three clan elders spoke, their expression extremely ugly. They were strong, and followed this group the entire time. But the moment they sensed this change, they rushed to the scene. You guys finally decided to show yourselves. Excellent. Fang Yuan snickered, Bai Sheng and Bai Hua struggled intensely in his hands. Evil scoundrel, release us. If you kill me, you will die too. The two children shouted with all their strength, their faces were turning red from suffocation. These two children were future rank 5 Gu masters, lords of Bai clan, the righteous twin stars. But now, unfortunately, they were defenseless and were being strangled by Fang Yuan. After a while, their eyes started rolling back and their breathing slowed. Fang Zheng. Don't make a mistake, release the two young masters. We've given you the chance, as long as you release the young masters, we will let you leave, we will definitely not pursue you. What do you want? Primeval stones, Gu worms. The 3 clan elders were anxious, and their eyes revealed a ruthless expression as if they couldn't wait to attack. Humph, weren't my earlier words clear enough? All of you get out, if not. Fang Yuan laughed deviously, using his gaze to signal to Bai Ningbing. Bai Ningbing understood, taking out the chainsaw golden centipede. She injected primeval essence into it, and the razors started rotating furiously, moving towards Bai Hua's tender arm. Let go of my sister, Lu, let go. Bai Sheng stared furiously, his breathing started getting rough as he struggled with all his strength, but Fang Yuan used just a little more strength and his words were stuck in his throat. Don't be rash. Stop, stop. At this point, more and more Gu masters entered, and everyone were screaming in anxiety. Fang Yuan laughed loudly, on the count of 3, if you are not all out of this cave, your young master's limb will be gone. Everyone gritted their teeth, their eyes burning with fire, they wanted nothing more than to chop Fang Yuan into pieces. Still not leaving? Fang Yuan's eyebrows rose and he moved Bai Hua closer towards the chainsaw. Ah! Everyone screamed. My God! A young female Gu masters covered her eyes. Quickly, get out of the cave. The clan elders shouted, they did not dare to gamble with their young masters' lives. Everyone gradually retreated, staring at Fang and Bai on the way out. If gazes could kill a person, Fang Yuan would have been dead 1,000,000 times. If rage was like water, they would have drowned under the tsunami already. When everyone was out of the cave, Fang Yuan passed Bai Hua and Bai Sheng to Bai Ningbing, before surveying the surrounding. Bai Gu Mountain was made of bones with no rocks or soil. This cave was the same, white throughout. The cave walls even had sharp bone spikes, although these bone spikes looked the same as in other caves. In fact, if one observed properly, they would find that these bone spikes were spiral at the tip, different from others. This was the Spiral Bone Cave, also the entrance to the Grey Bone Scholar's inheritance. The entire Bai Gu Mountain had many caves, but this was the only cave with so many spiral bone spikes. Fang Yuan had never been here. But in his previous life he had heard many stories which were even testified by Bai Sheng and Bai Hua personally. We entered the Spiral Bone Cave first, then accidentally found a bone spike that could be twisted. It was the mechanism to open the entrance. Fang Yuan thought for a while, before starting to search for that special bone spike. There were uncountable bone spikes in this cave, but in Fang Yuan's previous life, Bai Hua had revealed that back then when she and her brother had been playing in the back mountain, she saw a large bone spike in the cave, with very closely carved spiral markings. She touched it casually, and accidentally twisted it, opening the entrance. Fang Zheng, you are surrounded. There is no way to escape, come out. To be honest, we were quite kind to you, to think you returned our kindness with ingratitude. Fang Zheng, I'll give you some advice, leave some leeway for yourself. If anything happens to our young masters, we will take revenge on you with all our might. The cave was not deep, the shouts of the Gu masters could be heard echoing inside. Bai Hua started to sob. Bai Sheng said, Fang Zheng, stop it. Release us and I will let you two leave in peace. I assure you as the young master. He was young, but was calmer than an adult facing this predicament. The brilliance of a future star was already being displayed in him. Fang Yuan paid them no heed. Suddenly his eyes shone. He took a step forward before stretching his hand towards a rather conspicuous large bone spike. Next, he twisted it lightly. Creak. There was a loud sound and the bone spikes began to contract. A secret door opened from the side, revealing a squarish cave opening. Bai Ningbing's eyes shone. Bai Hua stopped crying, staring at this change in shock. Ah, there's a cave. Bai Xing shouted. Humph, keep your mouth shut. Bai Ningbing chopped on his neck, knocking him unconscious. Bai Sheng had screamed on purpose to leave traces for the people outside. As expected, a commotion occurred outside. Cave. Not good, they're trying to escape. Chase. Fang Yuan growled, if anyone dares to step inside, I will kill Bai Xing first. This shout stopped the Bai Clan Gu masters. Fang Yuan quickly walked into the cave. Bai Ningbing also knocked Bai Hua unconscious, carrying them on each of her hands and followed. This secret path was well lit, shining with a pure white light. It was just that there were bone spikes everywhere, stabbed into the walls like sharp spears. These bone spears were densely packed, sealing the whole tunnel. There was only a little space between them, allowing Fang Yuan to see a hall beyond them. It seems this is the reason you came to Bai Gu Mountain. I'll open a path for us. Bai Ningbing moved ahead, trying to use the chainsaw golden centipede, but Fang Yuan stopped her. These bone spears are extremely tough, don't be in a hurry. Fang Yuan searched around according to what Bai Hua had said in his previous life. He found the shortest spiral bone spike, and pulled it. Creak. Another sound of some mechanisms being activated. The cave behind the two sealed itself while the bone spears in the tunnel contracted back into the walls. Suddenly, the path ahead was smooth and unobstructed. Fang Yuan laughed heartily, turning and saying to Bai Ningbing, welcome to Bai Gu Mountain. Bai Ningbing's gaze flickered, as she looked behind subconsciously. The cave entrance behind her had sealed itself. The Bai Clan Gu masters would need to spend quite a bit of time to pursue them at least to open this cave entrance. Bai Ningbing's lips curled, revealing an excited smile. Everything had become interesting. This was the life that she was after. Chapter 222, White Bone Inheritance, 1. The secret tunnel was not long. After walking for a while, Fang and Bai arrived at a huge hall. The pure white hall was made out of bones. In the center was a huge vat. The vat was filled with milk like white liquid that was giving off a fragrant smell. As Fang Yuan got close to it, his memories resurfaced. According to Bai Hua, this vat should be connected to a spring below it. This spring was a milk spring. The spring water tasted like milk, a clean sweet taste. Not only was it a top-tier beverage, it was also extremely nutritious. Children grew better drinking it, and the elderly could maintain a strong healthy body as well. Milk Spring was the specialty product of Bai Gu Mountain. In Fang Yuan's previous life, after Bai Clan relocated here, they unearthed 5 milk springs, causing it to become their specialty production and even used it as a commercial product to attract many traders and merchants to come and make a deal. There is a gu inside this vat. Fang Yuan said, indicating to Bai Ningbing using his gaze. Although according to his memories, there was no danger at this location, Fang Yuan was vigilant. After all, this was not something he had experienced personally and his information was all from a third party. Things that carried risks, he'd rather let others do it. Bai Ningbing snorted, activating her defense and putting her hand into the vat. There are so many gu inside. Her brows raised in shock. When she pulled her hand out, her hand was full of gu worms. These goo were as large as a human finger and were completely white. One end was round while the other was sharp, like a miniature spear. This was the bone spear goo. Although this goo is only rank 1, the whole vat is almost filled to the brim with it. Bai Ningbing was slightly excited. Bone spear goo was similar to Guyu clan's Moonlight goo in that it was the foundational goo of the white bone inheritance. In his previous life, after Bai clan found this inheritance, many of the clan's goo masters equipped this goo, thus the bone spear goo also became a characteristic of Bai clan's goo masters. Look around again, there should be a rank 2 goo inside. Fong Yuan stood at the side with a plain expression. Bai Ningbing hauled for a few more times, before finally finding a rank 2 goo. This goo was similar to the bone spear goo, but on the surface of the bone spear, there were spiral markings, spiral bone spear goo. This goo was the evolution of the bone spear goo, its attack power and penetrative force was higher than the bone spear goo. In the huge vat, the bone spear goo was in the majority, and only a small number were spiral bone spear goo. This way, I finally have a standard method of attacking. Fong Yuan grabbed a spiral bone spear goo and thought. Charred thunder potato goo was very unstable, it needed to be planted in the ground, and it would have been planted in vain if others do not step on it. Also, if a goo master with poor memory planted it and forgot the location of the potatoes, he might even injure himself by accident. Moreover, the charred thunder potato goo's use had restrictions. It must be used in soil, and the more fertile the soil the better. As for a special location like Bai Gu Mountain, the charred thunder potato could not be used. Otherwise, Fong Yuan would not mind setting 1 or 2 more traps here. A pity there isn't a rank 3 goo. Bai Ningbing was slightly disappointed. She chose a spiral bone spear goo and placed it into her sleeves, planning to refine it later. She only felt curiosity towards these types of rank 2 goo worms. They could not display the true power of a rank 3 goo master in battles. Seeing no danger in the vat, Fong Yuan started to act. He hauled goo worms after goo worms out of the vat, and used the spring-autumn cicada's aura to instantly refine them using his primeval essence. This. What? Bai Ningbing was tongue-tied at this scene. In the matter of a few minutes, Fong Yuan had already refined a few dozen goo worms, and he was still continuing. Because of the spring-autumn cicada, he could instantly refine them. And because of his aptitude and the heavenly essence treasure lotus, his primeval essence recovery speed was much greater than the refining expenditure, thus he could continue the refinement non-stop. This was a crazy sight. Fong Yuan refined over 200 bone spear goo in his aperture, and over 20 spiral bone spear goo. Goo refinement was a tough barrier for goo masters, although Bai Ningbing had seen Fong Yuan instantly refine goo a few times before, it had never been so visually impactful. In Fong Yuan's hand, refining goo worms was as easy as eating and drinking, no, it was simply as easy as blinking. Simply way too easy. What secret does he have? Bai Ningbing was very shocked, Fong Yuan's image became even more mysterious in her heart. But on the surface, she just curled her lips and said calmly, "You got so many goo worms at once, can you afford to raise them?" Fong Yuan laughed, "Of course not. Bone spear goo, spiral bone spear goo, they all fed on milk. Thus, they were kept in this vat of milk. Don't see how this milk spring is one full vat, the expenditure was huge, only because there is a spring eye at the bottom of the vat, can it sustain till now. If Fong Yuan wants to raise and feed so many goo worms, he would need to have a milk spring himself. Even though I can't feed them, I would rather bring more with me, than let the Bai clan people gain them." Fong Yuan laughed, pointing to the vat, "Alright, destroy the rest of the goo." The vat had way too many goo worms, although Fang Yuan refined a lot of them, considering the limits of his rank 1 aperture, there was still a large number left behind. A moment later, Bai Ningbing looked at the floor of Gu corpses with a complicated expression. She knew clearly what the value of these Gu were. Destroying them was tantamount to destroying a small mountain of primeval stones. Even Bai Ningbing felt heartache. But, rather than leaving them for enemies, and letting Bai clan take them and grow stronger, they might as well destroy all the Gu. The two left the hall, and moved along another secret tunnel, getting to the second white hall. At the center of the hall, there were 3 white bone pillars. At the tip of the pillar, it was carved into a human hand, without skin or flesh, only left with bones. In the white bone hand, they each held 1 Gu. 3 pillars, 3 slumbering Gu worms. Fang and Bai got closer, and saw what was carved on the pillars, explaining characteristics of the 3 Gu. Ribcage shield Gu, flying bone shield Gu, arm bone wings Gu. Bai Ningbing stared at the pillar, muttering. Very quickly, her gaze was focused on a line, 3, choose 1, satisfied at heart. Bai Gu inheritance, left for future descendants. The meaning was obvious, they can only choose 1 Gu, and leave the others to future inheritors. Ribcage shield Gu, could cause a Gu master to grow 2 rows of ribcages, shielding their chest, and had great defense. It was a rank 3 Gu, advantages being, other than the initial growth period, which needs a lot of primeval essence, afterwards it can be sustained without primeval essence, something like the heavenly essence treasure lotus. After it is refined, it can be used without injecting primeval essence. Flying bone shield Gu, after using, 3 flying bone shields would fly out, being small and floating around the Gu master's surroundings. Arm bone wings Gu, would grow a pair of bone wings at the forearm area. Waving the wings would increase movement speed slightly, most importantly it increased attack speed. Ribcage shield Gu can be used together with the carapace Gu, to form defenses front and back. But the carapace Gu is bound to be replaced, and only the ribcage shield Gu alone is not wide enough. I have the jumping grass, and do not fight close combat. The arm bone wings Gu is also useless. Fang Yuan thought about it, and chose the flying bone shield Gu. He smashed the bone arm, refining the flying bone shield Gu and keeping it in his aperture. As for the other 2 Gu, he did not touch them. This is a righteous faction inheritance. This area tested the self-control of the inheritor. If they cannot control their greed and desires, taking all 3 Gu, then the future tunnels would change drastically. Although there would not be devious traps, their rewards would be much lower. Righteous inheritance is unlike demonic inheritance. Normally speaking, they are designed kindly. Gu masters having luck to encounter their opportunities would gain them, the only difference is how much. Bai Ningbing, seeing Fang Yuan not moving, also did not dare to move the pillars, afraid of special traps. The two moved along the secret tunnel, entering a 3rd hall. There was no more tunnels now after the hall, only 1 human skeleton in the cave in a sitting position. Before the human skeleton, there was a huge book. This book was made with bones, as long as an arm, wide as half an arm, and as thick as 8 inches. Fang Yuan indicated to Bai Ningbing to pick it up, and seeing no danger, took the book from her. This book was named Grey Bone Huge Book by the Bai clan twins in his previous life. Inside, there were many refinement recipes as well as the creator of the inheritance, Grey Bone Scholar's life experiences and why he set up this inheritance. Fang Yuan flipped the book. It was truly so. This is a genuine righteous inheritance. At the end of the book it says, this corpse is the Grey Bone Scholar himself. If the future inheritor has the kindness, they might as well pay respects to it, and kowtow 3 times. Afterwards, they can split the skull apart, and obtain 1 Gu. That is the Grey Bone Scholar's life-bound Gu. If the inheritor obtains it, they should make the world a better place and uphold justice. Fang Yuan laughed upon seeing this, handing the Grey Bone huge book to Bai Ningbing and kneeling on the ground, kowtowing 3 times respectfully. This was a true kowtow. His forehead hit the rough floor, emitting 3 loud sounds. Bai Ningbing was surprised, not expecting this side of Fang Yuan. After Fang Yuan finished, he stood up, and there was no commotion in the hall. He did not mind it, smiling lightly. In this hall, there are no more secret tunnels, but it is not the end. This place tests the inheritor's nature. If the person is kind-hearted and knows gratitude, they would kowtow. If they do 3 genuine knocks on the ground, a new tunnel would appear. But this is only one aspect. If they not only kowtow, but do not move the corpse, showing respect for the corpse of the senior, a second path would appear. In the previous life, Bai Sheng and Bai Hua both kowtow, but Bai Hua was afraid of pain, not giving off a loud sound. But Bai Sheng triggered the first path. Bai Sheng wanted to retrieve the Gu, but Bai Hua stood him, wanting to leave the senior in peace. Thus, Bai Hua triggered the second path. Fang Yuan thought about it, looking at Bai Hua and Bai Sheng. They were carried by Bai Ningbing, still unconscious. Bai Ningbing also looked at them, sighing, "It seems that from now on, we have to rely on these 2 to protect our lives. But I am very curious, what the life-bound Gu of this Grey Bone Scholar is. Let's split the skull." Fang Yuan shook his head. This is the most exquisite part of the inheritance. Curiosity would make a person want to see the Gu inside the skull, and the better they imagine it, it would be even greater than seeing the real thing. Don't be rash. Once he finished, a part of the bone wall shrunk, moving away and revealing a new tunnel. "I see." Bai Ningbing seemed to have understood something, about to strike but stopped by Fang Yuan. "Although this cave is correct, it is not the most valuable one. Wait a bit longer." Waiting makes time feel much slower. Especially when Fang and Bai are still being pursued by Bai clan. After waiting for 5 minutes, Bai Ningbing started to get impatient, but suddenly a new door slid open, revealing another tunnel. "Ha, this is it." Fang Yuan laughed loudly, moving forward and raising his leg, smashing Grey Bone Scholar's corpse to bits. When this tunnel appeared, the corpse lost its meaning. Fang Yuan took out a Gu from the skull, a rank 3 bone spike Gu. Chapter 223, White Bone Inheritance, 2. Rumble. There was an explosion, smoke and dust filled the air before clearing up to reveal a cave. There really was a cave. No wonder they disappeared completely, they must have entered this cave. It's odd, why is there such a mechanism here? Ah, clan leader is here. Bai clan leader had arrived just in time to see the group blasting open the wall and revealing the secret tunnel. This should be an inheritance ground. Accompanying the clan leader was Tai Dao Ku, who deduced it at a glance. So it was like that, those 2 thieves' true destination was here. Bai clan leader gritted her teeth as a chilling light flashed past her eyes. Truly great acting. She had been recalling the scenes of her interaction with these 2 in these few days, on her way here. The more she recalled, the angrier she got. She was actually duped by 2 youths. The majestic Bai clan leader along with a group of clansmen were all playing into 2 juniors' hands. If words of this were to spread, it would be an enormous strike towards Bai clan's reputation. Junior didn't handle it properly and couldn't protect the 2 young masters. Clan leader, I ask for punishment. Bai Lian, Bai Xingjing and others nervously knelt on the ground, asking for forgiveness. Stand up, you only did it according to my instructions. If we have to blame someone, we can only blame those 2 thieves for being too cunning. Bai clan leader's words relieved Bai Lian and the group from a great burden. You have been in contact with these two thieves all the time, did you really not find any flaws? Daoist Gu asked. The three girls stood up with complicated expressions. It was especially so for Bai Lian. She had been thinking she was playing Fong and Bai like toys in her palms, but to think that she was the one that was played. There were no flaws. Those two were too capable at pretending. Thinking back now, they were using our Bai clan. Truly cunning and devious. The three girls shook their heads as a reply to Daoist Gu. Daoist Gu had also learned about the general situation from Bai clan leader on the way. Of course, the matter regarding Bai clan spirit spring was naturally not revealed. Yes, as you say, those two thieves' real purpose should have been this place. Their strength is not enough to let them wander around Bai Gu Mountain, so they borrowed your Bai clan's strength. Daoist Gu analyzed from a third-person view. Bai clan's Gu masters' faces turned ugly upon hearing him. It was indeed so. In these days, they had sacrificed a lot and paid a huge price to pave a way through Bai Gu Mountain. However, they ended up paving the way for Fong and Bai. Curse these two scoundrels. If those two thieves land in my hand, I will cut them into pieces. Clan leader, let my group take this task, I will kill those bastards and wipe away this disgrace. In an instant, the mountain cave was filled with angry uproars. Bai clan leader looked around her before slightly nodding her head. It was not that she didn't want cruelest deaths for Fong and Bai, as the mother of Bai Sheng and Bai Hua, she hated not being able to be with her children at this moment. Morale was at its peak as the entire clan was motivated by anger. Bai clan leader looked towards the elder who had asked her to let him take the task, then I order your group to pave the way through this secret tunnel. Yes. The elder accepted the command. Hold up, the bone spikes in this passage are uneven and completely sealed off. How did those two thieves enter inside? There must be some mechanism. Let me check it first. Daoist Gu raised an objection. The elder who had just accepted the command glared, it is an emergency now, the two masters are in grave danger, it's going to take forever trying to slowly look for the mechanism. Bone spike Gu. Fong Yuan held this Gu and observed its details. This Gu was about a fist-sized and was like a ball cactus, with thorns like bone spikes all over on its surface. It was also somewhat heavy. It was a rank 3 Gu, a typical Gu which would damage both the enemy and the user. If the enemy received 1000 damage, then the user would be inflicted with 800 damage. The reason was when a Gu master used it, their skeleton would undergo changes before sharp and hard bone spikes protrude out. Before even using these bone spikes to confront the enemy, these bone spikes would first pierce through the Gu master's own flesh and skin. The pain was still secondary. If there wasn't a corresponding healing Gu to pair up with it, the situation would truly be messed up. The enemy might not die, but it sure would seriously injure the Gu master that used it. What Gu is this? Bai Ningbing curiously gazed at it. But when she heard Fong Yuan's introduction, she lost all her interest. It was not that she was afraid of pain, but rather she was already using ice muscle Gu. All the flesh on her body was already permanently changed to ice muscle by the ability of ice muscles Gu. It not only gave her defense but also stopped perspiration and stopped bleeding. However, if she used this bone spikes Gu, it would first remove her ice muscles, which to her was a loss instead of gain. Fong Yuan was also not too interested in this bone spikes Gu. But it was after all a rank 3 Gu, thus Fong Yuan refined it and stored it in his aperture for the moment. Let's go. Fong Yuan chose the hidden door which appeared in the last. Bai Ningbing was still the one to scout ahead. A downward flight of stairs was spread inside the door. This flight of stairs was long, at least about 1,000 meters. The surrounding lights gradually dimmed when they reached the latter half of the stairs, and the stairs were also getting narrower. By the time Fong and Bai reached the end of the stairs, the light had almost completely disappeared. In front of them was a tightly closed door. There were 4 words carved on the door: Flesh Sack Secret Chamber. These bones are really goddamn hard. Bai clan elder cursed out as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. 15 minutes had already passed, but they had only opened this secret tunnel by half. These uneven densely packed bone spikes didn't look any different from the stones of Baigu Mountain. But only after attacking them would one realize how shocking hard these bones were. Bai clan leader's expression also didn't look good. The more time passed by, the more danger her children could be in. Right now, this mother felt a century had painfully passed by instead of just 15 minutes. However, as a clan leader, she had to be calm and cool even if it was only on the surface. She had to be a role model to give confidence to her clansmen. Crack. Suddenly, a light sound echoed. The mechanism had turned on, causing the remaining bone spikes to swiftly shrink back to the holes on the cave walls. Everyone was shocked and looked towards the source one after another. Daoist Gu touched his chin and analyzed to himself, this mechanism is somewhat ingenious. To open the entrance, one would need to twist the spiral bone spike. This leaves a deep impression on people, and when people come to this secret tunnel, they would often rely on this impression and try twisting the spiral bone spikes near them. Unfortunately, to shut down this mechanism would require one to pull up the spiral bone spike and not twist them. In that instant, everyone was dumbfounded. The elder who had accepted the command was now completely red and seemed to be very embarrassed. After the group passed through this secret tunnel, they arrived at the first hall. This is... They were stunned. All around them were dismembered corpses. These corpses were the result of Bai Ningbing killing the goo worms that were in the vat. These should be bone spear goo, and there are also spiral bone spear goo. Some elders quickly recognized these goo. This really is an inheritance ground. In all my life, this is the first time I am experiencing it. Someone said excitedly. Look, there is a big vat in the middle, what could be inside it? Someone curiously pointed at the vat. However, the vat didn't have anything other than the milk spring. The Bai clan group were disappointed and then turned furious. These thieves really don't leave room for compromise. They didn't leave behind anything. Damn it, so heartless, they destroyed so many goo worms. Many cursed out in sorrow and indignation. Even the elders felt grief at this. Let's move quickly, the earlier we catch them, the less the damage we suffer. Daoist Gu said, causing everyone's gazes to brighten. With this stimulation, the morale of the group increased even higher, wishing they could immediately appear in front of Fong and Bai. The group then arrived at the second hall and saw the 3 stone pillars. There are goo worms left. The goo master in front shouted in happiness. Please take a look, clan leader. Soon, arm bone wings and rib shield goo both appeared in the clan leader's sight. Bai clan leader glanced at them and then made her people stow them. She didn't feel any happiness. Compared to goo worms, she was more concerned for her children's safety. Did you see? Those 2 goo were rank 3 goo worms. This inheritance really makes one anticipate what's coming. Luck and misfortune comes in turn, this saying is really true. Some were deeply moved and some were in awe. Don't you find it odd? Why did they leave behind these goo? On the contrary, Daoist Gu could clearly sense something fishy as a spectator. 3. Choose one, satisfied at heart. Baigu inheritance, left for future descendants. Someone soon discovered the words carved in the stone pillar. This doesn't look like a demonic path inheritance, I am afraid it is left behind by a righteous path Gu master. TSK, heart is satisfied, but none of us are satisfied. Let's move, quick. We need to save the two young masters first, it won't be late to visit it again later. The group urged each other and arrived to the third hall. They saw the skeleton sitting cross-legged and an enormous bone book. Grey Bone Scholar. So this inheritance belonged to this senior. An elder opened the book and realized that this was indeed a righteous path inheritance. By clan leaders' furrowed brows relaxed a little. This was the first good news she had heard till now. Righteous path inheritance was usually mild and wasn't treacherous like demonic path inheritance. Tai Dao Ku, however, was starting to frown. He increasingly felt something was wrong, the words on the stone pillar had given to an indescribable worry in him. The group picked up the smashed skull and saw a bone spike Gu inside it. Following that, a part of the stone wall slid open and showed a new secret tunnel. The group entered this passage. Flesh Sack Secret Chamber. Bai Ningbing murmured before trying to push open the door. The door was not locked at all and easily opened. Behind the door was a hidden room which was not that big, but was very grotesque. The walls in the hidden room were all made of flesh. When Fong and Bai walked inside, they felt like they had walked into the stomach of some monster. The flesh walls were warm and slightly throbbed rhythmically as if there was a heart inside them. As if sensing someone's presence, the flesh walls suddenly opened up a small crack and revealed white teeth all over it. Bai Ningbing was astonished. There seemed to be countless opened large mouths in the flesh walls. The mouths opened up with jaws clenched, revealing a set of even teeth. The phrase, "bearing one's fangs," seemed to match this scene perfectly. He, ha ha ha, he. These mouths let out all kinds of laughing sounds. The laughs mixed together and echoed in this narrow secret chamber, anyone that heard it would feel their hearts palpitate. Chapter 224, White Bone Inheritance, End. This flesh sack secret chamber was strange. The surrounding flesh walls were filled with mouths and the mouths were open, revealing tightly clenched white teeth. Not only this, these mouths were even letting out strange laughters, making one shiver all over. Fong Yuan patted Bai Ningbing's shoulder. This is the effect of flesh laughter Gu, it is just like earth treasury flour, and is used to store Gu worms. No need to worry too much. He had just finished saying this, when suddenly the teeth completely fell off from an open mouth and a scarlet tongue extended from the mouth. The tongue was very long, about over a meter, and the front part was curled up. When the tongue fully extended, the tip of the tongue started straightening and revealed a book on it. This was a bone book too, except it was many times smaller than the gray bone huge book, pocket-sized, about half of an adult's palm. Fong Yuan took it and then started looking through it. The main idea behind the contents of the book was, since the successor could reach this place, it is a proof of your pure nature and you can now inherit my true inheritance. I have two identities, Grey Bone Scholar and Flesh Bone Master. This flesh sack secret chamber holds many Gu. If the successor is fated, you can try knocking the teeth. If your luck is good and you open the teeth, you could take the Gu worm hibernating inside. This is purely testing one's luck. Fong Yuan understood when he read this. Bai Hua hadn't told him about this barrier in detail, in his previous life. Fong Yuan could only test it randomly. The first to succeed, however, wasn't him, but Bai Ningbing. Bai Ningbing bent her forefinger and lightly knocked the teeth. These teeth were like musical instruments and would produce some kind of clear musical tone when they were hit. She had just randomly knocked, and this mouth suddenly stopped its laughter, its teeth completely fell off and scarlet long tongue extended out from it, revealing within it a Gu. What Gu is this? After looking at this Gu, pleasant surprise emerged in Bai Ningbing's face before changing into an odd expression. This Gu looked quite peculiar as it looked like a set of dentures, spotless white teeth with an exceptionally neat set of upper and lower teeth, and gave off a pearl-like luster. Fong Yuan looked at it and immediately, a pleasantly surprised expression appeared on his face. Not bad, this is the famous rank 3 healing Gu, flesh bone Gu. Raising the dead, flesh white bone. Bai Ningbing mumbled. Rising dead Gu was accepted as the number 1 healing Gu among rank 4. Even if a Gu master died, as long as the time of death didn't cross 14 hours and their whole bodies were intact, one could use this Gu to resurrect them. However, this Gu could only be obtained by chance and not by seeking it as it was too valuable and rare. It was also a one-time use expendable Gu, with high demand but no supply. Flesh bone was a rank 3 Gu, but it wasn't an expendable Gu and could be used again and again. It was often used together with rising dead Gu. If a Gu master's corpse wasn't intact, one could first use flesh bone Gu to reconstruct their flesh, and then use rising dead Gu to resurrect the Gu master. Throughout the history, this pairing was quite common and had benefited a lot of big shots. Among them were even rank 9 immortal venerables and demon venerables. This was an ideal healing Gu to Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan had painfully searched for such a long time, and now his wish was finally being realized. He, want it? You can exchange it with Yang Gu. Bai Ningbing held this Gu in his hand and laughed in satisfaction. Fong Yuan sneered, you think I am stupid? Bai Ningbing's smile faded and her gaze became cold. We can come to an agreement as long as you hand over the Yang Gu. Fong Yuan, I have followed you for so long, but know that my patience has a limit. I am no longer afraid of death, at worst we will both die together. You aren't afraid of death, but do you think I am afraid? Fong Yuan sneered. He had already expected such a situation and thus wasn't surprised. Bai Ningbing took back her gaze and then carefully checked the flesh bone Gu on her hand. The corner of her lips curled up. Killing you might also be a good option. Look at yourself, you only have rank 1 cultivation but you can actually instantly refine Gu, and you also have the heavenly essence treasure lotus. Besides these, if I kill you, I can at least possess this inheritance. Just thinking about it makes my heart beat in excitement. Bai Ningbing's words were full of threat. Possess this inheritance? Huh, did you forget the Bai clan who is chasing us? They might even be walking down the flight of stairs outside right this moment. Without me, do you know where to go to next? This inheritance looks like a one-way path from the surface, but actually has many branches. I can indeed not fight you at the moment, but you are too naive to think you can seize the treasures by killing me. Do you think I will give you the opportunity to take the Yang Gu? Just try it, if you don't believe me. Fong Yuan then turned around and started knocking at the teeth again. In fact, he also didn't know where to go from here, as this secret chamber didn't have any other passages. Bai Ningbing looked at the completely defenseless back of Fong Yuan. It looked like she could kill him if she just made a slight move. But against all reason, Bai Ningbing, however, didn't dare make a move recklessly. Fong Yuan's words all struck her mind. Without Fong Yuan, how should she move next? Returning the way she came would be a death road. Bai Ningbing narrowed her eyes, and for a moment, she even felt, is even the Bai clan's attack under Fong Yuan's calculation? Creating an external force to prevent her from killing him for the benefits? Till now, Bai Ningbing was in a puzzled state. She couldn't understand, why would Bai clan cooperate and accompany Fong Yuan all the way here? In fact, her heart concealed deep worry ever since she was controlled by Fong Yuan. Yang Gu was with Fong Yuan, she had always been worried Fong Yuan would use this to threaten her. Although Fong Yuan said he would hand over the Yang Gu to her once his cultivation reached rank 3, what kind of person was Fang Yuan? Bai Ningbing couldn't be more clear about this. Going back on his words was a common thing to him, as natural as eating food and drinking water. She might as well go die rather than to believe in Fang Yuan. Let's take an example of something that happened just recently. That miserable Bai clan leader, wasn't she an able woman? An elite and a very wise person, but after believing in Fang Yuan, what was her current state? Fang Yuan was too good of an actor. Goosebumps covered Bai Ningbing's body when she recalled the scene of Fang Yuan's tears in the banquet. This was a genuine sly fox. He even intentionally glanced at Bai Lian repeatedly, just to lay a trap in which Bai clan was very happy to step in. She could still remember the brilliant expression on Bai Lian when Fang Yuan revolted, shocked and lifeless. What Bai Ningbing was most worried about now was Fang Yuan not handing over the Yanggu even after reaching rank 3. The possibility was too big. Now I am a rank 3 and he is still rank 1, I can still hold some initiative. But in the future when his cultivation reaches rank 3 or higher, wouldn't I just be controlled by him and become his chess piece? Bai Ningbing was holding this kind of worry in her heart, and this worry deepened even more after Fang Yuan used green copper relic Gu and instantly broke through to rank 1 upper stage. Bai Ningbing was worried, but right now, there were many who were more worried than her, their worries even reaching an extreme point. What's going on? A group of people stood outside the exit of the inheritance and looked at their surroundings, their faces turning horribly ugly. They had moved quickly through the path and charged through several bone halls. They were able to make some gains, but from the start to end, they didn't encounter Fang and Bai. In the end, they walked out of the secret tunnel, to the outside of the mountain. It really is like this. Daoist Gu suddenly exclaimed. His words immediately attracted the attention of many. Brother Tai, what do you mean? Bai clan leader immediately asked. If it was before, she would have already realized the answer with her astute senses. But now, her children were kidnapped and as time continued to pass by, she became more disconcerted. This Baigu mountain inheritance seems to be a one-way path, but it actually has many branches. Like this branch in my hand. He casually broke off a thin branch from a bone tree near him. The path at the start should have been the same for both us and them, thus we could see their traces on our way. But afterwards, we should have walked through a branch path and they should have walked into another branch. Do you still remember the second hall? There were 3 pillars and I suspect that there was a contraption set up in the pillars. When we walked into the third hall, there was the grey bone scholar's skeleton, but there were no signs of the skeleton being moved. The crucial point should be the secret tunnel after the second hall. Daoist Gu hadn't finished speaking when Bai clan leader coldly shouted, "Let's go back." Time continued to pass. Fang Yuan really wished time could extend by 50-60 times right now. He knew Baigu Mountain's inheritance, it could at most hoodwink someone for a while. When Bai clan Gu masters realized the truth behind the structures, he and Bai Ningbing would be in danger. But as it so happens, he didn't know how to continue from here. The secret chamber didn't have any other passages. They definitely couldn't return back the way they came, even if the majority of Bai clan group walked through another passage, they will definitely have some people guarding the exit. Could this secret chamber already be the final area? Did Bai Hua and Bai Sheng obtain all their Gu worms from these mouths? That can't be. The rumors in my previous life said Bai Hua and Bai Sheng arrived at a precipice after going through this inheritance site. This rumor has been publicly approved by Bai clan. Maybe the mechanism to open the passage is hidden in one of these mouths. Fang Yuan's mind moved lightning fast. They didn't have much time left. Bai Ningbing was confused, he didn't know the state they were in and only thought Fang Yuan had made some plans. However, Fang Yuan knew their situation was becoming more perilous. This door didn't have any defensive functions, who knows whether a furious mob of Bai Clan Gu masters might come crashing down the door the next moment. By then, we can only rely on Bai Hua and Bai Sheng as our protective amulets. But this is not a very reliable guarantee. This world has many magical Gu worms. There are many with control abilities like causing dizziness, hypnosis, paralysis and so on. Bai Clan is a powerful clan and definitely has such methods. When he thought of this, Fang Yuan couldn't help looking at Bai Hua and Bai Sheng. The twin siblings were lying on the ground, still unconscious. Got it. Fang Yuan suddenly got a great idea. He decided to wake up these two kids. First of all, time was pressing, he needed more manpower. Second, Bai Hua and Bai Sheng were the true fated owners of Bai Gu Mountain inheritance. What's more, they were both mortals, there was no need to worry they could cause any accidents. Executing his ideas immediately, Fang Yuan quickly walked over and kicked the twins. Chapter 225, Jade Bones, Steel Bones. Rumble. There was an explosive sound before the bone wall collapsed, a new path appeared in everyone's sights. Destroying was much easier than creating, especially when this inheritance didn't have anyone controlling it. We have news from ahead. The fifth path has been completely investigated but the target hasn't been found. Reporting to clan leader, I entered the sixth path and found a bone hall. There was a skeleton and a huge bone book in it. Reporting, seventh path also has a hall with similar structure, with a skeleton sitting cross-legged and also a bone book. Reporting, discovered the eighth path. Search again. Bai clan leader's face was gloomy, there were over 7 giant bone books piled up in front of her. This design really is in accordance to people's hearts. When a Gu master finds the skeleton and the bone book, they would subconsciously have a misunderstanding by thinking they already inherited the whole inheritance, but in truth Grey Bone Scholar has set up many similarly structured halls. The true inheritance should be hidden in one of the paths. Tai Dao Ku was deeply interested. Bai clan leader's brows furrowed even deeper. The situation had become complicated, she wasn't worried Fang and Bai would head back the way they came, since she had already arranged many people to guard the entrance. What she was worried about was Fang and Bai would escape from some paths in the inheritance. After all, she could only control the entrance and not the countless exits. Right at this moment, a Gu master rushed over with an ecstatic expression, found it. We found a bone hall in the eighth path, the skeleton in there has been smashed to pieces and the Gu worm in the skull has also been taken. This is definitely the path they took. Tai Dao Ku's spirits was raised. Lead the way. Bai clan leader immediately moved. After a short period, a group of people hurriedly arrived at a hall. How can there be 2 secret tunnels? An elder was surprised. Which path did those 2 demonic path thieves take? Regardless, we will just go in 2 groups. Once we reach them, we must protect the young masters no matter what. The flight of stairs that led to Flesh Sack's secret chamber stood out and attracted the attention of Bai clan leader, Tai Dao Ku and most of the elders. Flesh Sack's secret chamber. After a while, the group reached the end of the stairs. Boom! The door was smashed to smithereens, and the group flocked inside. However, there was not a soul in the secret chamber. He, ha ha ha, he. The countless mouths on the wall produced all kinds of laughing sounds. What nonsense is this? Laughter meat Gu, especially used to store treasures. These mouths are like drawers. This mouth is opened quite wide, they might have gone through here. Bai clan leader glanced around before finally, her chilly gaze stared at the only secret tunnel in this chamber. You, and you will remain behind, rest of you will follow me. A while ago, in the same secret chamber. Bai Sheng had just regained his consciousness when he felt a sharp pain in his stomach. If you don't want to die, stand up. Shortly, he heard a ruthless voice. Towards this voice, Bai Sheng had the deepest impression of it. It was precisely the owner of this voice who had cheated a whole clan and kidnapped him. Even the identity of Guyu clan's young master might be a scam. Scammer, hoodlum, demon. Despite cursing in his heart, Bai Sheng still obediently crawled up. He only then found that he was in an extremely strange place. The flesh walls around him were filled with mouths and were producing cacophony of laughters which was reverberating in his ears. Flesh laughter Gu. He blurted out as he recalled the records in the books. Little guy, you are young but are quite knowledgeable. Fong Yuan smiled. According to the rumors in his previous life, he heard this by clan brother and sister were innately intelligent, especially the big brother Bai Sheng who had high wisdom even at young age with a memory ability that was close to photographic memory. Right now, he was able to recognize the flesh laughter Gu. It seemed the rumors were not baseless. You too. Bai Sheng gritted his teeth and stared at Fong Yuan and Bai Ningbing with deep hatred. Big brother. Bai Hua had also been kicked awake by Fong Yuan. She ran to Bai Sheng's side while sobbing. Bai Sheng promptly protected his sister behind him. What a great sibling relationship. Bai Ningbing chuckled. You malevolent woman. You grew up so beautiful, but your heart is as poisonous as a scorpion. Bai Sheng fearlessly scolded. The smile on Bai Ningbing's face immediately disappeared. Bai Sheng's words deeply stabbed her. Woman, beautiful, she didn't want to hear these words even a little bit. Slap, slap, slap. She walked forward and grabbed Bai Sheng before slapping him thrice. She possessed the strength of a crocodile, and although she restrained majority of her strength, after she finished with her slaps, Bai Sheng's two cheeks turned red and swollen. Venomous woman, evil woman, kill me if you have guts. However, Bai Sheng still continued to curse. Slap, slap, slap. Bai Ningbing gave him another 3 slaps. Sob sob, let my big brother go, please release my big brother. Bai Hua grasped Bai Ningbing's leg and implored, crying. Sister, don't beg her. Bai Sheng spoke with difficulty. Fong Yuan sighed, he then walked forward and grabbed Bai Hua's collar. The little girl cried out in panic when she was lifted by Fong Yuan. Bai Sheng could not longer act unyielding as he anxiously shouted, evil thief, let go of my sister. Fong Yuan extended another hand and tightly pinched Bai Hua's cheek, before saying in an unhurried tone, so noisy, if you make any more noise, do you believe that I will cut off both of your tongues? Yes, how about I start by cutting off this little girl's tongue first? A slight smile raised the corners of his lips, cold light flashed in his eyes as he released his killing intent. Bai Hua was so scared she didn't dare to weep anymore, tears floated in her eyes. Bai Sheng wanted to open his mouth to talk back, but his heart immediately palpitated with a glance from Fong Yuan, and he shut his mouth. This is good. Obediently cooperate with me and maybe I will let you live. Fong Yuan was still smiling. Bai Ningbing's mouth twitched. However, Fong Yuan immediately added on, I am saying the truth. I don't dare to make an enemy of your mother, capturing you is also to ensure our safety. If you obey us, we will let you go. Of course, if you don't cooperate, I don't mind cutting off your tongues or few of your fingers to play with. Then what do you want us to do? Bai Sheng took a deep breath, he wasn't afraid of the cold Bai Ningbing, but was afraid of the smiling Fong Yuan. Do you see these mouths in the walls? Fong Yuan's smile turned even bigger. He explained the details and let these brother and sister go about knocking the teeth. Barely a moment had passed when Bai Hua cried out in fear. In front of her, a mouth opened up, its scarlet tongue extended and revealed a quail egg-sized bone ball. The ball was covered with black and white stripes, making Fang Yuan associate with an animal from Earth, zebra. Fang Yuan quickly walked over and took this gu, his countenance changing in pleasant surprise. If he wasn't wrong, this was a movement-type gu, footless bird. This gu could only be used once, but its body was big and it could fly thousands of miles. This really was like receiving a pillow when one was sleepy. Fang Yuan had just been worried about how to escape, and to think Bai Hua would present him with a footless bird. However, this pleasant surprise was just the beginning. After a while, Bai Sheng also achieved success. He knocked and opened a mouth, a bone was revealed on its tongue. The two ends of this bone was smooth and round, the middle part was long and slender, and there was a greenish glow to the bone like a green jade stone. Jade bone gu. Fang Yuan held it, before immediately refining and putting it into his aperture. This time, it was Bai Ningbing's turn to be envious. Jade bone gu could remodel the gu master's skeleton into that of a jade-like quality, making the bones harder and more supple. This effect was permanent like black and white boar gu or the crocodile strength gu. Even more important thing was jade bone gu could be matched with ice muscle gu to produce excellent effect. Bai Ningbing already had ice muscle. If she also possessed jade bones, she would have ice muscles and jade bones. The two effects would mutually complement each other, producing a much better result. However, this jade bone gu was a one-time use expendable gu. It also had a shortcoming: the gu master would suffer from extremely intense pain when using it. A lot of gu masters with weak willpower have died from the pain of using the jade bone gu. Do you want it? You can exchange it with meat bone gu. Fang Yuan smiled. Bai Ningbing coldly snorted and turned around without replying, increasing her efforts in knocking the teeth. But this action was purely relying on one's luck. There were 10 pairs of teeth in a mouth, and one needed to at least knock 5 teeth in correct order for the teeth to fall off. Bai Ningbing hadn't succeeded apart from his first try. As for Fang Yuan, he was even more miserable. However, after some time, Bai Hua and Bai Sheng again gave pleasant surprises. Bai Hua knocked down another set of teeth, providing Fang Yuan with an iron bone gu. And the mouth Bai Sheng knocked, gradually opened wide, changing into a new secret tunnel. Such luck of the brother and sister made Bai Ningbing inwardly gasp in surprise. She didn't know this pair of brother and sister was the true fated owner of this inheritance. Fate was a type of otherworldly, magical, mystical strength. Especially in this world, there were some rare gu worms that contained the fragments of the law of fate, giving some lucky gu masters a grasp of some powers of the fate. Since the new secret tunnel had appeared, Fang Yuan didn't think of staying any longer. By clan gu masters could arrive at any time, and the remaining gu worms were in the mouths which were locked firmly and were very difficult to destroy. They could only be left behind for them. Fang Yuan again knocked Bai Sheng and Bai Hua unconscious, carrying them in each of his hands as he followed behind Bai Ningbing into the giant mouth. The two came upon a hall as they walked through this secret tunnel. This was the widest bone hall they had come across. Just from the area alone, it was over 2 square kilometers. In the center of the hall was a bone pyramid. The peak was flattened into a platform with 2 flights of stairs leading to it. Fang Yuan and Bai Ningbing looked at each other. There were nothing else other than this bone pyramid. After checking their surroundings and noticing no dangers, the two walked to the platform on the peak of the pyramid. There was a sculpture of a skull of a giant ferocious beast on the platform. It was taller than half a man and looked like a lion or a tiger, with tightly closed fangs. Chapter 226, Bone Flesh Unity. Looks like the sculpture of either a lion or a tiger skull. Isn't this the rumored mechanism which needs two people to cooperate? A thought flashed in Fong Yuan's mind. There are words carved in this sculpture's fangs. Bai Ningbing made a new discovery. She then began to read the carvings in a low voice. Gemini with one mind, three spirits unite. Fated or not, do not be forceful. What does this mean? This is the code to opening the mechanism in this place. Gemini means two people should work together to open the mechanism. Three souls indicate a person's mind, palm and eye. Fong Yuan recalled from his memories. Among the four limbs of a human, palm was most nimble. Among the five organs, the quickest was the eyes, and human's mind could think as fast as a lightning spark. Hence, they were called three spirits. Come, put your palm on the pupils of the sculpture. There was a translucent, pure red gem in the eyes of the skull sculpture. The red stone was as big as large porcelain bowls and it clearly reflected the figures of Fong Yuan and Bai Ningbing. However, there was no change at all even after putting their palms on the red gem pupils for a long time. Your words make sense, but it turned out to be wrong. Bai Ningbing didn't let go of any chance to snide at Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan's expression turned dark. Bai Hua had recounted and described about this mechanism according to his previous life's memories. Logically, this should be the correct procedure, but why was there no change? One-minded Gemini, three souls united. Fong Yuan muttered, 3 souls united has been achieved, but one mind, one mind. A bright light slowly appeared in his eyes as he continued his thoughts. Is it saying the two people to open this mechanism must be of one mind and one heart? If it is so, even if he and Bai Ningbing were working together, they were only forced by the situation and were actually divided in hearts, with each having their own plans. No wonder, they couldn't achieve the one mind. When he thought of this, Fong Yuan couldn't help looking at Bai Sheng and Bai Hua again. As a result, this pair of brother and sister was again kicked awake by Fong Yuan. Evil thieves, what do you want? Bai Sheng angrily shouted after having woken. Bai Hua, however, didn't cry anymore. Her two big eyes were closely gazing at Fong and Bai with deep hatred. Fong Yuan couldn't be bothered to explain to them. He directly grabbed the palms of the two and placed them separately on the pair of red gem pupils. They were truly the inheritors decided by the fate. The moment these two small hands touched the red gem, it let out a bright light. Crack, crack. The skull slowly opened its mouth and revealed a large pile of coal stones and dry woods. In the center of the black coal stones was a simple-looking pottery container and a scroll lied on it. What is this? Fong Yuan casually threw the twins onto the ground, then picked up and read the scroll before coming to an understanding. It turns out the owner of this inheritance, gray-boned scholar, didn't have a high aptitude, thus he was distressed about his cultivation throughout his life. All his life, he put all his efforts into researching a type of gu that could help a gu master to quickly cultivate. There were already plenty of cultivation assisting gu worms, the most typical being the liquor worm. However, these gu worms were mostly very rare and would be very difficult to popularize. Gray-boned scholar's aspiration was big. He wanted to research and refine an excellent gu worm that could be widely used. However, even when his lifespan was at its end, even after countless failures, he wasn't able to achieve success. At the final juncture of his life, maybe heaven took pity on him. When he was setting up the White Bone Mountain inheritance, he suddenly had an extremely ingenious enlightenment. What was the main method to quickly raise a gu master's cultivation without the help of the specific gu worms? It was to let an elder impart his primeval essence. Previously at Qing Mao Mountain, Gu Qi Cheng had received such help, receiving the refined primeval essence from his grandfather Gu Yuqi Lian. However, this move had a big disadvantage. It was the mixture of different primeval essence, relying on an elder's higher-ranked primeval essence to wash and refine the aperture walls would leave behind his aura in the aperture, causing a Gu master's future development to be greatly restricted. Unless one used cleansing water Gu to cleanse the mixed aura. However, cleansing water Gu was also a rare Gu and ordinary Gu masters would find it difficult to obtain it. Even elder-level characters would have to rely on luck or pay a tremendous price. Thus, imparting method also couldn't be widespread. Hence, Grey-Boned Scholar thought of a wonderful concept. If there was a Gu which could refine others' primeval essence into the Gu master's primeval essence, wouldn't that mean there would be no mixed aura after imparting? He began making series of attempts, and after removing most of the possibilities, he made a plan which had the highest probability of success. The name of this experiment was Bone-Flesh Unity Gu. This was what was written in the scroll: to refine this Gu, two Gu masters must work together. And these two Gu masters must have blood relation, parents and children or twins. Relying on the connection of the blood lineage could one transform the primeval essence. However, Grey-Boned Scholar didn't have enough time to put this concept into practice. After having made most of the preparations, he could only helplessly stop at the final juncture. Although he had two nicknames, he, however, was only one person. What he lacked were two Gu masters who fulfilled the criterias. The final content on the scroll clearly revealed Grey-Boned Scholar's endless regret. He did not have enough time to redo the preparations, and could only leave behind this blueprint. If someone fated was to arrive to this point and could open the mechanism and see this scroll, that would mean the Gu masters who met the conditions had appeared. There is no harm in trying it, no matter what the result, please convey it to my gravestone. These words in the scroll contained a lifetime of obsession of Grey-Boned Scholar. It turned out this pyramid Fong Yuan was stepping on was the tomb of Grey-Boned Scholar. There was no need to try though. Fong Yuan already knew the idea of Bone-Flesh Unity Gu was a success. Because in his previous life, Bai Sheng and Bai Hua, relying on this dual cultivation, had become the twin stars of righteous path, pushing the might of Bai clan towards the peak with their rank 5 cultivation. However, it was quite troublesome for Fong Yuan now. He had originally thought Bone-Flesh Unity Gu was a finished product. But in fact, it had still not been refined into existence yet and couldn't even be considered half-finished. Moreover, he and Bai Ningbing didn't fulfill the conditions to refine this Bone-Flesh Unity Gu. Unless, Gu Fangzheng had been here. Even then, refining this Bone-Flesh Unity Gu might not end up good. According to the description on the scroll, Bone-Flesh Unity Gu was a series of Gu and didn't refer to just one type of Gu. And the deeper the feelings between the two Gu masters refining this Gu, the better the quality of the refined Bone-Flesh Unity Gu. Looking at the relation between Fong Yuan and Fong Zheng, the refined Bone-Flesh Unity Gu would absolutely not be perfect. In Fong Yuan's previous life, this Bone-Flesh Unity Gu had of course been refined by Bai Sheng and Bai Hua. However, the time was now many years in advance, although the two had deep feelings, but they were yet to become Gu masters and thus couldn't fulfill the criteria. Bone-Flesh Unity Gu was the most important target of Fong Yuan in this inheritance. The materials and the forge were already well prepared by Grey-Boned Scholar, the only thing lacking was the final step, refinement. Give up. Fong Yuan, of course, wasn't willing to. Then again, to refine it, let's not speak of the refinement conditions not being met, there was still a group of powerful experts chasing them. Time was pressing, Fong Yuan gritted his teeth and decided to take the risk. He and Bai Ningbing only met half the criteria, but Bai Sheng and Bai Hua, however, met the other half. Maybe there was a hope for success if the four worked together. Come, help out. Fong Yuan began to ignite the dry woods in the skull sculpture. The fire instantly soared and burned furiously. You plan to forcibly refine it? Bai Ningbing was shocked. This can't be a sensible option. Although she said so, she still made her move and put her palm on the red gem pupil, pouring her primeval essence into it. The blazing fire suddenly changed color, from orange to eerie blue. The pottery container was roasted by the fire. The several hibernating goo worms woke up from the heat and began to crazily struggle. The pottery container shook constantly, but there was no damage to it. The refining steps wasn't complicated. Fang Yuan and Bai Ningbing alternatively poured their primeval essence. Soon, they reached the final critical juncture. This step needed fresh flesh from the two Gu masters, which would be thrown into the fire to be purified. The scroll clearly stated that the more flesh was thrown into the fire, the better the effects would be. Fortunately, we have flesh-bone Gu. Cutting off few pieces of flesh wouldn't be any problem. Bai Ningbing was just about to take action when she was stopped by Fang Yuan. Slow down, I have a better idea. Bai Ningbing followed Fang Yuan's line of sight to Bai Sheng and Bai Hua, the twins. You actually want to tamper with the modify at this juncture? A disturbed gaze flashed in Bai Ningbing's eyes as she realized Fang Yuan's intention. What do you want? Bai Sheng protected his sister behind him, as all of a sudden, he felt a calamity looming over them, causing him to feel anxious and panicky. Being meat or fish on another's chopping board, when Fang and Bai were refining the Gu worms, they knew they couldn't run away, thus they had been obediently staying to the side, waiting for their clansmen to come to rescue. However now, Bai Sheng felt tremendous regret. You should feel honored that your sacrifices will bring into existence an entirely new type of Gu worm. Even Senior Grey Bone would feel happy if he knew in the netherworld, right? Fang Yuan gave an evil grin as he pressed on towards the pair of brother and sister. Sister, run away! Bai Sheng shouted before charging towards Fang Yuan and grasping his leg. Big brother! Tears spilled out from Bai Hua's eyes, and just when she was hesitating, Fang Yuan had already knocked Bai Sheng unconscious. Seeing Fang Yuan coming closer to her, an enormous fear was spreading at the little girl's heart. She turned around and ran, but how could she be faster than Fang Yuan? She was quickly caught by Fang Yuan, her heart sank down and she futilely struggled and wailed, "Mother, where are you?" Fang Yuan's expression was indifferent as he knocked her unconscious too. It was all done efficiently. He removed all the clothes from this pair of brother and sister, then carrying one on each hand, he threw them into the fire. The moment they were thrown into the fire, they immediately woke up due to the heat. Severe pain attacked them as they tried to madly flee. The two jumped out from the fire with their limbs crazily moving about as they desperately struggled. Fang Yuan coldly snorted, before kicking them back into the fire. The scroll stated that it required fresh flesh, thus Fang Yuan didn't want to kick them to death. As such, after he kicked them, they again ran out before he kicked them back in again. This continued over and over, until Bai Sheng and Bai Hua were finally burned to death. Their bodies resembled candles as they slowly melted. The fire turned from eerie blue to scarlet blood color. However, the fire transformation slowed down and didn't change to reddish purple. The scroll had stated, the color of the fire had to change into reddish purple for this step to be considered a success. What to do? Bai Ningbing's brows were furrowed. The Gu masters would also receive backlash if the Gu refinement failed. Fang Yuan's mind worked at turbo speed. Bai Sheng and Bai Hua were the fated inheritors. Why did it fail? It seems because there was a discrepancy because they were not Gu masters. If so, we need to try again. Fang Yuan didn't hesitate as he activated Tusita flower to spit out a sharp blade. He stretched his forearm and slashed. Blood started flowing rapidly and he threw his own flesh into the fire which was now blazing higher than a man's height. Your turn. After doing this, he threw the sharp blade to Bai Ningbing. "You sure it will work?" Bai Ningbing hesitated for a while before she similarly used the blade to slash at her forearm. However, because of her ice muscles, the blade seemed to be cutting into ice. With no other choice, Bai Ningbing called out "Chainsaw Golden Centipede" and sawed a piece of flesh. When her flesh landed into the fire immediately turned reddish-purple. Good, success or failure depends on this. We need to pour our primeval essence together. Fong Yuan was overjoyed at this scene. The two poured their primeval essence into the red gem pupils at the same time. The mechanism started slowly closing up, like a bone beast swallowing the blazing flames. 2 rows of fangs came together and the jaws closed securely. The flame continued burning from inside, roasting the skull into a shade of scarlet. Bang! The pottery container seemed to have exploded. The whole skull shook. Only after hearing this sound, Fong and Bai let go of their hands. Fong Yuan closely stared at the movement while extending his hand towards Bai Ningbing. He didn't say anything, but Bai Ningbing already knew what Fong Yuan wanted. She snorted, but thinking about the situation, she had no choice other than to give the flesh-bone goo to Fong Yuan. She didn't have the ability to instantly refine goo worms, but Fong Yuan could. Flesh-bone goo didn't resist even a bit under the aura of spring-autumn cicada and was instantly refined. However, although Fong Yuan refined it, he couldn't use it due to his low cultivation. Thus, he again handed it to Bai Ningbing. Bai Ningbing received it and immediately activated it. An orange glow covered the wound on her forearm and almost instantly, skin and flesh grew out and her injury was completely healed. However, Bai Ningbing's rank 3 peak stage primeval essence was also instantly down by 20%. The disadvantage of flesh-bone goo was it required instant consumption of a great amount of primeval essence. If it were Fong Yuan's green copper primeval essence, he wouldn't be able to activate it even if his primeval sea completely dried up. Following, Bai Ningbing healed Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan's face was pale. He didn't have ice muscles to stop his bleeding in a short period, thus he had lost a lot of blood. The injuries on their forearms had healed, but the pain was still as intense as before and their hearts trembled from the pain, even feeling dizzy. But the two had iron willpower. Despite such pain, their expressions didn't change as they forcibly withstood the intense pain. In a flash, the skull slowly opened up. The fire had already disappeared. There were neither any traces of the pottery container nor the corpses of Bai Sheng and Bai Hua left. 2 goo worms appeared in Fong Yuan's sight. One was green and another red. They were tied together like 2 jade bracelets, and quietly let out warm luster as they hovered in the air. This is the bone-flesh unity goo. Without taking the time to carefully investigate, Fong Yuan took it and instantly refined it, storing it into his aperture. Let's go. He flew down the platform and rushed into the new secret tunnel that had appeared at the end of the hall. Only a short moment after, Bai Clan Goo Masters arrived at this hall. Someone refined a goo here. The remaining aura in the air made the elders' expressions change. Look, there are clothes of the 2 young masters. Soon, they found children's clothing that had been torn by Fong Yuan on the high platform. Seeing this, an intensely bad feeling struck Bai Clan leader's heart, almost causing her to black out. She didn't dare to even make the connection. Chase them. They can't have gone far. My children are definitely with them. Bai Clan leader shouted. Her 2 eyes had become bloodshot. Chapter 227, Footless Bird, Spread Your Wings and Fly. Sprinting. The secret tunnel seemed to continue on forever. But any long journey eventually came to an end. After the first glimmer of light, Fong and Bai's vision gradually expanded. The exit. Bai Ningbing shouted. According to the info from my previous life, this secret tunnel should lead to a cliff on Bai Gu Mountain. Feng Yuan did not speak, his thoughts rumbled in his mind. He should thank the two dead siblings, Bai Sheng and Bai Hua. Their information attracted Feng Yuan here. And because of their sacrifice, Feng Yuan managed to obtain the coveted flesh-bone unity Gu. Suddenly, footsteps could be heard from behind. We've finally caught up. We found those two bastards. Where are you going? Bai Clan Gu masters rushed up imposingly, seething with killing intent. Bai Clan leader was ahead of them all, with the elders behind her. The narrow tunnel turned the Bai Clan group into a long queue. Blitz Gu. Suddenly, a clan elder accelerated, his body moving like a cannon, catching up to Feng Yuan. Bai Ningbing! Feng Yuan shouted. Bai Ningbing gritted her teeth, swinging her hand behind her. Blood Moon Gu. With a crisp sound, a blood blade flew out, hitting the elder and slowing his movement. But immediately, all kinds of lights exploded in the tunnel as large numbers of attacks came towards Feng and Bai. Bai Ningbing, take this. Feng Yuan shouted, lending the canopy Gu to her again. Bai Ningbing activated the canopy Gu, Iron Spike Thorns Gu, as well as the defense of the ice muscles, all three together to resist the attacks. Bai Clan, don't you want to know the location of your two young masters? Feng Yuan shouted loudly. As the Bai Clan Gu masters remembered Bai Sheng and Bai Hua were in Feng and Bai's hands, they stopped their attacks. Speak, what did you do to our clan's young masters? If anything happens to them, you will pay dearly. Return my children. Bai Clan leader flew into a rage, she pointed forward with her finger and a cold light shot out. Frostfish Gu. This Gu was only the size of a dart and looked like a fish. It drew an arc in the air as it shot forward, homing down towards Feng and Bai. Feng Yuan snorted, he didn't dodge and just let the Frostfish Gu hit him. Suddenly cold air enveloped his body, and his speed drastically fell. Stealth Scales Gu. With a thought, there were ripples undulating around his body and making him invisible. Don't think so. A clan elder suddenly stretched out his right hand and grabbed towards Feng Yuan. Swoosh. With a soft sound, the Stealth Scales Gu that was hiding in Feng Yuan's aperture suddenly broke into pieces and perished. Feng Yuan's heart sank, activating the jumping grass immediately. There was a numbing sensation on his feet as green grass that looked like springs grew out of his flesh and skin. Feng Yuan used the elasticity of the green grass, and jumped forward, his speed increasing drastically. I'll take my leave first, remember to jump. He left behind this weird sentence. What? Bai Ningbing was confused, but then heard the wind blowing behind her. Her heart jumped when she turned around to look. It was the Bai Clan leader, her eyes dyed red, looking like an agitated lioness. Her furious aura made even Bai Ningbing's heart shudder. After all, she was a rank 4 Gu master. Bang! Bai Clan leader punched directly, the huge force shattered the canopy Gu's white armor immediately. Bai Ningbing threw up a mouthful of blood, as she summoned the Chainsaw Golden Centipede. The Chainsaw Golden Centipede turned into a golden light and coiled around the Bai Clan leader. Using this opportunity, Bai Ningbing sprinted and arrived at the exit. It was a cliff. At this moment, Bai Ningbing suddenly understood what Feng Yuan meant, he wanted her to jump off a cliff. You cannot escape. Bai Clan leader shouted from behind. As for the Chainsaw Golden Centipede, it had been torn to pieces using brute strength. Bai Ningbing was struggling. At this height, it was a guaranteed death if she jumped down. But in this circumstance, she had no other choice. She gritted her teeth and jumped. She really jumped. She's dead meat. Some by Clan Gu masters exclaimed, stopping before the cliff. Bai clan leader looked down and saw Bai Ningbing rapidly falling down. Her veins popped on her forehead as she growled, "I want to see them if they are alive, and their corpses if they are dead. I will definitely catch them." Wind roared in Bai Ningbing's ears as she continued to fall. She had never thought there would be a day where she would be forced to jump off a cliff. "I'm going to die like this. Although this is exhilarating, I am not satisfied." As death approached, Bai Ningbing's heart was in turmoil. "I have not obtained the Gu. What a tragedy to die as a female. But once I reach the ground, I will definitely be a pile of smashed meat and no one will be able to tell my gender anyway." Bai Ningbing was not sure why she was having such a strange thought right before death. At this time, the turbulence around her increased, as she heard a voice, "Bai Ningbing." Bai Ningbing turned around. How could it be anyone else but Fang Yuan? At this time, Fang Yuan was descending as well, but he was stepping on a white bone bird below his feet. Footless bird. This bird had no flesh or blood, its body made of bones. It had an eagle's head, crane's body, swallow's tail and 2 pairs of wings, but no legs. Fang Yuan's body was covered in blood and filth. It was evident that he had sustained many injuries back in the secret tunnel earlier. "Grab my hand." He squatted on the bird's back, reaching out his hand. Clap. With a clap, 2 hands grasped each other tightly. Fang Yuan exerted more strength and pulled Bai Ningbing onto the back of the bird. However, at this time, there was a rock less than 300 meters below them, as the footless bird descended towards the rock like a shooting star. "Careful, we're gonna crash." Bai Ningbing shouted, her heart almost jumping out of her body. The mountain rock increased in size rapidly in her vision. Fang Yuan's eyes shone with brilliance, shouting ferociously, "How can my demonic path falter in this tiny little Baigu mountain? Rise for me. Rise, rise, rise." His shout echoed in the valley. Under his manipulation, the footless bird flapped its wings furiously, using all its strength to slow the descent. Cracks started appearing on its 4 bone wings. Fang Yuan's primeval essence in his aperture reduced rapidly, but with the heavenly essence treasure lotus sending out large amounts of primeval essence, Fang Yuan's primeval sea rose and lowered continuously. A group of bone beasts relaxing near the mountain rocks felt the commotion and raised their heads before immediately sprinting in a run. A grayback ostrich was so scared it dug its sharp head into the white bone mountain rocks, raising its butt high in the sky. Ostriches were like this. When they were scared, they liked to feel false assurance. Moments away from crashing, Bai Ningbing forgot to breathe and Fang Yuan looked on with furious eyes. Under the intense wind pressure, the white bone trees on this mountain rock collapsed. But eventually, the footless bird flew past the ostriches but, soaring into the sky at a steep angle. The ostrich's butt wing was shaved till nothing was left, revealing its round empty butt. "Ha ha ha." Bai Ningbing started laughing wildly on the bird's back. Having barely survived and relieving the pressure of death, she felt her heart gradually sinking back into place. Exciting, truly exciting, the excitement of life and death was always the most breathtaking. Wasn't such life what she desired and pursued? Footless bird, fly to the blue sky. She was almost on the verge on singing in excitement. Clan leader. They're alive. At the cliff, Bai Clan's Gu masters said with dark expressions. "We can't catch up, that is the footless bird, able to fly 10,000 miles in a day." Tai Dao Ku sighed helplessly. Flying Gu worms were rare, and those who could match the footless bird's speed were little to none. Under rank 5, the footless bird was the #1 flying steed. Alas, the heavens are blind. How can such evildoers be allowed to live? Some elderly shouted in anger, pounding on their chests. Bai clan leader's eyes were bloodshot. She gritted her teeth while clenching her fists so tightly that her bones seemed about to burst out. Hearing Bai Ningbing's laughter, she even had the urge to jump down the cliff to pursue them. It was not that Bai clan did not have a flying Gu. Some Gu masters had already displayed their abilities, chasing after Fong and Bai. But looking at their speed, even an idiot would know that it would be impossible for them to catch up to these two. An intense bitterness filled the Bai clan Gu masters' hearts. They could only watch helplessly even when the criminal was fleeing before their very eyes. No. We definitely cannot let them escape. We cannot. A Gu master shouted in fury, his body suddenly started burning with intense flames. Bai Zhan. Bai clan leader's expression changed. Lord Clan Elder. Everyone was stunned. Grandpa. Bai Zhan was full of tears. Clan leader, everyone. We cannot let these two scoundrels escape, or where will our Bai clan's dignity lie? The revenge for our two young masters is of utmost importance. After I am gone, please take care of my grandson. This lad's temperament is as tough as mine. He started losing his voice at the end. His entire flesh, skin and bones turned into fire, and his voice naturally disappeared along with them. Even his pupils transformed into a dark purple color. He had turned into a human-shaped fire. Fire burned and raised the surrounding temperature, and everyone started retreating back while a sad song seemed to sound in the mountain. Human Torch Gu. A rank 4 Gu, which once used, immolated the entire body, turning it into fire until his life force was depleted. This Bai Zhan elder chose to sacrifice his life to gain this immense power. Good, our clan shall stand here and witness elder's contribution. Bai clan leader was moved. But Bai Zhan could no longer hear them. As his life burnt, he felt an unprecedented power flowing in his body, completely free and unbound. The purple-black pupil gazed at the surrounding people and looked at his grandson one last time, before flying into the sky. The human torch rapidly approached the footless bird. Good! Everyone shouted in excitement. Bai clan leader's steel-like cold expression showed some agitation too. A strong foe. Bai Ningbing's expression was grim. She lacked experience in aerial combat, she might fall and be smashed to bits if she was careless. Howl! The human torch growled, intense killing intent flickering in his dark purple pupils. Sparks flashed as the human torch's speed increased again, pouncing towards Fong Yuan like lightning. Hold on tight. Fong Yuan was concentrating the entire time in maneuvering the footless bird. Footless bird raised its speed and pulled away, causing the human torch to pounce on empty air. Waves of sighing and pity could be heard from the cliff. But quickly, the human torch pounced up again. Footless bird swerved again and narrowly dodged. Bai Ningbing was almost thrown off and quickly grabbed into a bone that was jutting out. Howl! The human torch came attacking again. Fong Yuan laughed coldly. The footless bird suddenly contracted its wings, dropping to the ground. The human torch followed closely, its speed surpassed the footless bird and was getting closer. Footless bird suddenly spread its four wings, stopping its downfall and flying in the reverse direction. Boom! The human torch's flying was completely dependent on the propulsion of the flames. He had no wings to help him quickly change his direction, and came crashing down onto the mountain rocks. At once, over 6 kilometers square of land burst into flames, killing all bone beasts and large numbers of bone trees in its range. In the sea of fire, a lump of fire gathered into a human shape again, flying away, and chasing Fang and Bai relentlessly. However, the use of Gu worms also depended on their users. In Gu Master's cultivation aspects of nurture, use and refine, use was one. Not anyone could simply take out a Gu and display its full ability. The methods and techniques involved were very profound. Human Torch Gu was a suicidal technique, and naturally it would be Bai Zhanlai's first time using it. But Fang Yuan, although this was his first time riding the footless bird in this life, he had used an uncountable number of flying Gu worms in his previous life. His experience was many times of Bai Zhanlai, almost to the point of being an instinct ingrained upon his soul. At the cliff, Bai clan members were observing the battle situation. Their expressions slowly changed from hopeful and anticipation, to anger. Anyone could tell now that the footless bird was playing around with Elder Bai Zhanwen. The Human Torch's growling, which originally sounded so awe-inspiring and full of authority, now sounded like he was helplessly venting in a sorrowful state. Damn it! Someone clenched his fist in frustration. How can this happen? Tai Dao Ku was also stunned by Fang Yuan's skill, sighing as he knew there was nothing he could do anymore. Fang Zheng, I want you to die. Bai Zhanlai shouted, the seed of hatred sowing deep in his heart. Elder Bai Zhanwen's sacrifice was becoming a joke, being toyed around by Fang Yuan. It was an ironic slap across Bai clan's face. Gradually, everyone's anger turned into disappointment and despair. We can't catch them anymore. Can we do nothing other than to look at this? Guyu Fang Zheng. Many people spoke this name, gritting their teeth. Footless bird flew casually in the air, dodging the Human Torch yet again and again. Young man, your bird maneuvering techniques are superb, ha ha ha. Bai Ningbing laughed heartily, letting her guard down. Fang Yuan's expression froze, careful. Boom! An intense explosion occurred. Bai Zhanwen knew he could not catch up to Fang and Bai, thus he chose to self-detonate. The explosion and flames engulfed the footless bird. Thankfully, the footless bird was made of white bones, even its wings were like pieces of thin bone pieces. The fire didn't cause much damage, the true danger was the impact caused by the explosion. Footless bird's body was full of cracks, and it lost its balance, plummeting to the ground. After descending for a distance, under Fang Yuan's manipulation, it regained its balance, and flew far away. Fang Yuan! Bai Ningbing screamed. Earlier, Fang Yuan lent her the canopy Gu, she had the Gu worm to protect her, but Fang Yuan did not. When the explosion occurred, Fang Yuan had no time to activate a defensive Gu. When the footless bird rushed out of the flame, Fang Yuan's body was burning in the fire. The intense winds caused the fire to burn even more greatly, even the earth-hearing ear grass in his right ear was burnt. But his expression was cold like steel, like he was not suffering any injuries at all. After footless bird regained its stability, Fang Yuan took out Tusita flower and poured the milk spring over his head. The fire was extinguished, but his skin was mostly burnt and his face disfigured. He looked extremely tragic. Bai Ningbing tried to speak, but could not say anything. Fang Yuan, however, smirked and laughed, I like the footless bird, do you know why? He smiled, but the sight was horrifying. Why? Because it has no legs, only wings, thus it has no choice but to fly. When it lands, that signifies its destruction. Betting it all in one chance, fly or die. Bai Ningbing's blue pupils dilated, shining with brilliance. The winds blew on her face, causing her silver hair to flutter. Bai Ningbing's lips also curled up, he, then let us fly up into the sky. Footless bird flew into the sky, becoming a dot in the horizon before eventually vanishing. On the cliff, clan members watched until their eyes seemed to penetrate the sky, but none spoke. An eerie silence engulfed everyone. The world was so vast. The eerie blue sky, the snow-like white Gu mountain, the sunlight shining down, Footless bird, Fong and Bai's silhouettes, this scene was deeply engraved into everyone's hearts. Fury grew in their hearts, as hatred germinated in their hearts. Puff. Clan leader vomited a mouthful of fresh blood, and fell down on her back, fainting. Clan leader. Lord Clan leader. Quick, healing Gu masters, save the clan leader. Panic ensued on the cliff. Author's note: what is demonic path? A kind of path that has its own ideology and beliefs. Towards what a demonic path is, everyone has their unique understanding towards it, but to me, the footless bird embodied a kind of demonic spirit. Demonic path is cruel, not only to others, but more towards oneself. Thus, it is not well liked by the masses. Chapter 228, Dark Leopard Dies for Love. The setting sun was dyed like blood as the clouds on the west resembled burning flames. Under the setting sun, the footless bird started slowly dropping down after having flown for the majority of the day. It had made a series of extreme diving and rising actions, while suffering from the explosion of the Human Torch, its body was filled with cracks and could no longer continue to fly. Bam! Under Fong Yuan's meticulous control, the footless bird finally fell into a forest. Smoke and dust flew everywhere and groups of beasts escaped in a panic. Where is this? Bai Ningbing jumped off from the bird and surveyed her surroundings. The trees were short and thick, but had a lot of lush leaves, unlike the sparse amount in the bone trees of Gu Mountain. The trees in this forest were like a canopy blocking the sunlight, and the leaves were all purple, light purple, dark purple, reddish purple, violet. The evening wind blew over. If one looked into the distance, all they would see was a sea of purple. A purple forest. We have been moving north all along, and according to our course, this should be near Xiu Mountain. Fong Yuan guessed. His countenance was covered with worry. Xiu Mountain is safe in daytime, but is extremely dangerous in night. It is getting dark, we need to quickly leave and find a safe place to stay. Okay. Bai Ningbing nodded. After over 2 hours, they found a cave luckily. The cave's original owner had been a pouched bear. This species of bear possessed a natural marsupial pouch on their stomach, just like kangaroo. Dry wood burnt with crackling sounds, the bonfire quietly blazed, the meat stew in the iron pot over the rack was already boiling, giving off a dense aroma. The fat, tender bear paws were already roasted. Besides these, there were also many delicacies, from Bai clan, stored in Tusita flour. The two quickly began devouring the food, and their strained mood began to relax. Bai Ningbing suddenly laughed, her dark blue eyes looking at Fong Yuan. Look, this is retribution. You burned that pair of brother and sister to death, and now, you yourself are burned to this state. The light of the fire shone upon Fong Yuan's face, the severe wounds on his face made him look horrifying and ugly. If a timid girl saw his appearance, they would probably scream in fear right then and there. Fong Yuan, however, laughed, not minding the comment. He was even inwardly happy. Fortunately, we have meat bone gu, it won't be difficult to recover your original appearance. You just need to cut off the burned skin and flesh, then we can use the meat bone gu to grow them anew. But, you are only a rank 1 and can't use the meat bone gu. Come, beg me, maybe my kind and magnanimous heart will feel pity for you, and heal you. Bai Ningbing wouldn't let go of any chance to snide at Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan made a motion of raising his eyebrows, despite his eyebrows already being burnt off. Why would I want to heal it? Isn't this situation quite good? He laughed. We killed off the two young masters of Bai clan and also played the Bai clan leader and the elder. Do you think they will let us go? This injury saves me the effort to change my appearance. Earth hearing ear grass was destroyed. Fong Yuan's right ear was shattered. The injuries to cartilage in his ear wasn't something the meat bone Gu could heal. But even if he could heal it, he would rather have one ear less to change his appearance. In past, there was a demonic figure, Bai Xianxia, who was captured and put into a prison. He feigned becoming mad, smearing his own stool onto his body, even cutting off his fifth limb, and became a eunuch. His enemies finally believed he had gone crazy and thus loosened their vigilance, giving him a chance to flee. Later on, he returned to take revenge and massacred the whole family of his enemies, including the old and the young. There was a great figure of the righteous path, Empress Wu Ji. When she was young, her own elder sister had seized her rights to the throne. She could only hide this grievance inside her. Her elder sister was jealous of her beauty and thus, to avoid letting her make things difficult, Empress Wu Ji cut off the bridge of her nose, disfiguring herself, but gained the space to survive and grow. After over 10 years, she overthrew her elder sister's regime and re-established her authority. She then ordered her elder sister's 5 sensory organs to be cut off, making her live in a state where she couldn't choose to live or die. Throughout the history, all the great figures were good at biding their time and not being attached to fleshly appearance. No matter if it were the righteous path or the demonic, regardless of men or women, they were all like this. After Empress Wu Ji took the control, she didn't heal her nose even though she had the healing means, keeping this as a warning to herself. The Wu clan became the top clan of the southern border, suppressing Tai clan, Shang clan, Fei clan. Its dominance couldn't be challenged. Those who indulged in fleshly appearance were mostly superficial and it would be difficult for them to succeed. Regardless of whether it was this world or earth, both attested to this point. King Yu of Zhou, just for a smile from his beloved concubine Bao Si, lighted the warning beacons to trick the vassal states. What was the outcome? People lost their trust in him and he was killed by the barbarians. Lu Bu for Jiaochan, King Wu for Shishir, Xianxia the conqueror took consort Yu when he went on military campaigns. What was the outcome of these people? By contrast, Cao Cao was short, Sun Bin was handicapped, Sima Qian was castrated. Everyone loves beauty. However, achievements were not in the least relevant to fleshly beauty, only a temperament which could firmly let go was the foundation to a great success. Actually, it is you who is too dazzling, with your blue eyes and silver hair, you should change it. Fong Yuan said as he looked all over Bai Ningbing. Bai Ningbing coldly snorted and didn't reply. Fong Yuan continued, the footless bird was damaged, but we have only flown over few thousands of miles. Although we are quite far away from Bai clan, they will definitely come to capture us for the things we have done. We are in a dangerous situation. If they spread wanted posters, our days will become even more difficult. Bai Ningbing considered the idea with a frown, before agreeing, all right, I am also tired of this outfit, changing into a new appearance might be a brilliant experience. Next, the two started to calculate their losses and gains. There were losses: earth hearing ear grass, chainsaw golden centipede, carapace Gu, iron thistles, stealth scales Gu, footless bird, were all destroyed in the pursuit. However, to Fong Yuan, being alive was the most important. Only by being alive could there be possibilities and hope. This was the foundation to everything. To continue living, even if he had to give up spring-autumn cicada, so what? In a word, being able to let go was the character of a great man. As for gains, there were large numbers of bone spear Gu and spiral bone spear Gu in Fong Yuan's aperture. They had also obtained rank 3 flying bone shield, jade bone Gu, iron bone Gu, the healing type meat bone gu and several bone books recording all kinds of recipes. Besides these, they had also gained clearing heat gu from the Bai clan. Of course, the most significant was still the bone-flesh unity gu which they had successfully refined at such a dangerous moment. Compared to the gains, their losses weren't that serious. This was a complete inheritance, after all. The flower wine monk might be a rank 5 expert, a cut above the rank 4 grey bone scholar, but Fang Yuan's gains from the flower wine inheritance loses out to this Bai Gu inheritance. The reason was Bai Gu inheritance had been carefully planned out for a long time by grey bone scholar, whereas flower wine inheritance was completed in haste and hurry. In fact, Fang Yuan only walked through the main path of the Bai Gu inheritance. There were many other side branches, and moreover, there were many steel teeth locks that weren't knocked open in the flesh sack secret chamber. These things would all serve the Bai clan. They controlled this place, and so long as they spent some time and energy, they could definitely devour the whole inheritance. But it doesn't matter, I have taken all the gu worms in my list. As long as this bone-flesh unity gu displays its effects, it will far surpass the others. It is just that the earth-hearing ear grass has been destroyed, which is a bit troublesome. Fang Yuan's philosophy was only those things that are practical can be valuable. They had lost the chainsaw golden centipede, but the spiral bone spear gu could qualify to replace it. Iron thistles and carapace gu were gone, but they still had canopy gu and flying bone shield. However, with the loss of earth-hearing ear grass, they now had a hole in the investigative aspect. They had lacked in the healing and movement aspects before, but now these two aspects were more or less filled, whereas a gap appeared in the investigative aspect. In life, things often do not go your way. The night time in the Ziyu mountain was much livelier than daytime. Fang Yuan and Bai Ningbing took turns to keep watch, both didn't get proper sleep. Occasionally, roars and sounds of battles of the wild beasts came from outside the cave. Especially at the crack of dawn, an intense battle occurred near the cave, waking up the soundly sleeping Fang Yuan. This was a fight between 2,000 beasts kings. Two-winged black feather python had provoked a dark leopard. The two exchanged killing moves back and forth, their movements were very noisy, and their momentum, astonishing. Dark leopard was a ferocious beast specific to the Ziyu mountain. They had purple spots on their skin, their bodies were powerful and they were extremely fast. They would often leave behind ethereal afterimages when they moved through the forest. Their movements were quiet and their prey usually ended up in their stomachs without even being able to react. Fang and Bai were on the edge, they could even say they were trapped in the cave, unable to escape. As time passed, the dark leopard gradually became outmatched, getting into a corner. This was a pregnant female leopard. Dark leopard always came in male and female pairs. The female leopard had been pregnant, and the male leopard had gone out to hunt. Who would have thought the black-feathered python would attack during this gap? In the end, the female leopard died by black-feathered python's constriction. However, before the black-feathered python could escape, the returning male leopard saw it, then after another life-and-death battle, the male leopard killed the killer, but it was welcomed by the female leopard's cold corpse. Dawn came. The first rays of light shone upon the dark leopard's beautiful fur. However, the female leopard was no more. The male leopard paced back and forth around the female leopard's side and let out a mournful whimper. They were so near, yet so far, separated by life and death. Why is it not leaving? Bai Ningbing grumbled. Relax, the male and the female dark leopards are of one heart, if one dies, the other will not continue to live alone. Fang Yuan sighed, I will go back to sleep. He returned to the depths of the cave to sleep again while Bai Ningbing remained behind at the cave entrance to keep watch. The male leopard paced back and forth before lying down, it stuck out its tongue and started licking the female leopard's wounds. The wounds on the female leopard had turned pitch black due to the black feather python's poison. The male leopard lived all its life here, it could distinguish this poison with only a sniff. However, it no longer cared now. In the end, its resplendent eyes started dimming and slowly closed. By the time it was noon, it had passed away. It was quietly lying together with the female leopard, their beautiful fur made them look like delicate artworks. Having personally seen this whole course of events, Bai Ningbing couldn't help letting out a deep sigh. Not long after, Fang Yuan woke up and walked out full of vigor. He saw Bai Ningbing resting against the cave wall, staring blankly at the corpses of the two dark leopards. "How is the harvest?" Fang Yuan asked. Bai Ningbing shrugged and spoke with a waning interest. "The Gu worms that could fly have all flown away, I don't have any means to capture Gu. Besides, didn't you also see last night's battle? Those Gu worms died or are injured, the remaining aren't something we need." If it were not for that, why would someone like you go back to sleep?" Fang Yuan laughed. "Although they are 2,000 beasts kings, the Gu worms on them aren't anything great. But that doesn't necessarily mean there are no harvests, hee. Saying so, Fang Yuan walked towards the dark leopard's corpses. Chapter 229, Resting and Recovering at the Hamlet. Bai Ningbing couldn't help but become curious when she saw Fang Yuan walking towards the dark leopard's corpses. She saw him squatting down and feeling around the ears of the dark leopards. After a while, Fang Yuan took out two exquisite purple leaves from the male leopard's left ear and the female leopard's right ear. This was Breath Concealment Gu. Rank 3 Grass Gu, Gu masters could use it to conceal their aura and cultivation level. To some degree, it was a camouflage ability. Almost all the dark leopards had a breath concealment Gu in the ears. However, the dark leopards moved in pairs and were at least 1,000 beasts king level. They were experts in sneak attacks, and were extremely agile. Capturing them was a very troublesome and dangerous endeavor. Moreover, the dark leopards were specific to Xiyu Mountain. Thus, the knowledge of there being breath concealment Gu in dark leopards' ears wasn't widely known yet. In Fang Yuan's 150th year in his previous life, there emerged a righteous path figure nicknamed Hunting King, Sun Gone. He was the first to wantonly hunt the dark leopards for their breath concealment Gu, and made a fortune by selling them to the market. After him, countless Gu masters rushed to Xiyu Mountain to make a fortune. Like this, in only few years, the dark leopards were all annihilated. Right now, however, the Xiyu Mountain was still a secluded area. In this place, daytime was safe whereas the night time was extremely dangerous. There were no clans here, but there was an embryonic form of a clan, a hamlet. Fang Yuan didn't have the earth-hearing ear grass to scout, but fortunately they obtained 2 breath concealment Gu. Fang and Bai relied on this Gu to avoid many dangers. They were not going to go up the Xiyu Mountain, their current strength was enough to move across the ordinary forests, but not enough to go deep into the famous mountains and great rivers. Even Bai clan would have to pay a great price to explore these areas, let alone the current Fang and Bai. They went around the Xiyu Mountain and moved forward, and after 2 days, they discovered a mountain path. It was a man-made path, and was much safer than the forests. Of course, if one's luck was bad, they might come across dangerous situations. Fang and Bai moved along the mountain path, until one evening, they saw a thin curl of smoke. The two glanced at each other before hastening their steps. They saw a hamlet lying in a mountain basin. The hamlet was surrounded by short stone walls, with guards standing on several points. It was evening now and the farmers were returning in groups, walking to the hamlet with hoes and other farm tools on them. However, these were all mortals and were nothing to worry about. "Let's go." Fang Yuan walked towards the hamlet. Just like this? Bai Ningbing was somewhat surprised. Their appearance quickly attracted the curiosity and suspicious glances of the villagers. Most of the villages in this world weren't too welcoming to foreigners. The clan villagers were even more so. They would set up tight defense around the whole village, for fear that spies and robbers would infiltrate the village. May I ask the two distinguished guests if you are respected Lord Gu masters? Before Fong and Bai even reached the entrance, two guards who looked alike approached them. Bai Ningbing didn't speak. According to their original agreement, Fong Yuan would take charge of all the communications. Fong Yuan shook his head. Hello brothers, we are both mortals. The two guards seemed to heave a sigh of relief when they heard this, their faces clearly loosening up. The younger juvenile guard disdainfully sized up Fong Yuan's body, before speaking with some disgust. I'll say, how could such a ugly person possibly be one of those Lord Gu masters who possess divine powers? Fong Yuan's whole body was burned and he had one ear less. Such an ugly appearance birthed revulsion in people. Bai Ningbing also changed her normal attire. She cut off her long silver hair short and also dyed it black. Her body that was white as snow due to ice muscles, was now blackened. Only the color of her eyes couldn't be covered, thus she wore a straw hat and covered half her face. As the two stood together, they remarkably looked like mortal villagers. Little brother, watch what you say. The senior guard reprimanded the junior guard, then vigilantly looked at Fong and Bai. Where are you from and what are you doing here? We are from a hamlet across the mountain. We were taking a handcart filled with herbs and salted meat, thinking to sell them, but we bumped into a tiger on our way. Whoa, that really scared me to death. We ran crazily all the way and only then could we save ourselves. We don't dare to go back for the moment, so we came to your hamlet and hope to spend the night here. We will immediately leave tomorrow. Fong Yuan spoke off the top of his head. The vigilance in the guard's gaze lessened. Fong Yuan said, Brother, no need to scold your little brother. I got this injuries from a fire. That day, our house was on fire, and while trying to salvage the rice, I was burned to this state. Everyone is suffering nowadays. The senior guard heaved a sigh. You can enter the hamlet, and if you don't find anyone willing to offer you shelter, you need to make do by spending the night in the corner of the walls. After finishing saying the instructions, the guards opened the way. After Fong and Bai entered the hamlet, the senior guard instructed his brother, go tell the village head, that two outsiders are here. He as an elder has rich experience, ask him to keep a lookout. Brother, you are too cautious. How could these two be Gu masters? Besides, why would Gu masters try to deceive us mortals? To have fun. If I tell you to go, then just go. Making me run errands again. The young guard grumbled but still left in the end. The scene inside the hamlet was peaceful. The air was filled with the aroma of food. After a day of hard work, families gathered around the dinner table and talked happily. Bai Ningbing involuntarily felt relaxed in such an environment. The reason for her disguise was because they didn't want to leave behind any traces which could make it convenient for the Bai clan to track them. Another reason was because of Fong Yuan's cautious nature. By hiding themselves in an unfamiliar environment, they could react to any abnormalities. It was easy to find a house to take shelter in. Just give the villagers a primeval stone fragment and they would be more than happy to vacate a house. However, doing this would not be in accordance with their current identities. Fong Yuan had a better method. He walked around the hamlet, before stopping in front of a worn-out house. There was only an elderly woman in this household. She had a grandson but he was killed by a wolf when out playing. The old lady was drawing water from a well in front of her house. The action seemed to take a lot out of her. Auntie, let me help you. Fong Yuan put on a silly grin and eagerly ran towards the old lady. The old lady was shocked when she saw Fang Yuan's appearance. However, Fang Yuan acted passionately with a silly grin on his face, and after quickly pulling up several buckets of water, the old lady's vigilance disappeared. "Young man, you are an outsider." The old lady smiled open her mouth, which had a few missing teeth. "Yes, we were hoping to stay over for the night in your house. Auntie, I can do your work, may we?" Fang Yuan foolishly said. "Okay." The old lady happily agreed. Although the villagers would help each other financially in normal times, she still needed labor force like this. Bai Ningbing watched this scene speechlessly. This Fang Yuan could really act. After fetching the water, it was chopping the firewoods. Fang Yuan also cooked the meal. The old lady repeatedly praised him for his swift and skilled movements. "Auntie, let me help you fetch some more water. We will talk after I fill the water vat." After the dinner, Fang Yuan again went to fetch water on his own accord. The old lady kept on saying no need, but Fang Yuan insisted on doing so. After the water vat was filled, the old lady talked with tears in her eyes. "Young man, you are really such a bitter life like this old lady." Evidently, Fang Yuan had fabricated a miserable tale during the dinner, which left a deep impression on the simple old lady. Lanterns were a luxury to ordinary people, thus the house was dark in the night. The only light came through the window from the moon. The house had two simple and crude beds. Bai Ningbing was lying on the floor but was very satisfied. The exhaustion accumulated from days of walking was now slowly dissipating. Fang Yuan laid cross-legged on the bed, his mind was in his aperture, observing the bone-flesh unity Gu. He had not used this pair of Gu even once since he got it. After all, he had refined it after tempering the recipe. And with Fang Yuan's cautious nature, he naturally needed to properly study it before using it. Suddenly, Fang Yuan opened his eyes, a bright light flashed past them. "There isn't any problem, bone-flesh unity Gu can be used." After saying so, he summoned the pair of jade bracelet-shaped Gu. This two jade bracelets, one was green as grass whereas the other was red as blood. They were both tied together and couldn't be separated. Fang Yuan had already refined them before. However, to bring out their magical effects, he needed to give up one of them and let Bai Ningbing refine it. Bai Ningbing was sitting in a cross-legged position as she received the Gu, but he wasn't in a hurry to refine it and instead looked at Fang Yuan. "What do you plan on doing next?" Fang Yuan chuckled, "And here I was thinking you wouldn't ask." Despite it being dark, Bai Ningbing could sense Fang Yuan smiling at this moment. She just snorted and didn't speak. Fang Yuan didn't plan to conceal his plans from her. "Our next destination is Xianxia Mountain." Xianxia Mountain, Shang Clan. Bai Ningbing's brows slightly furrowed. Shang Clan was one of the top forces of the southern border, not weaker to Tai Clan and Fei Clan. Only the Wu Clan was above it. Shang Clan was famed for their businesses in southern border, and even the people outside the southern border, as long as they had some experience, knew that the Shang Clan of the southern border was the center for businesses and trading. Shang Clan City was so flourishing that there were opportunities for primeval stones everywhere. When Bai Ningbing still had northern dark ice soul physique, she had looked forward to visiting the Shang Clan City. Now however, she was hesitating. With the crimes we have committed against the Bai clan, we might already be wanted by all the righteous path figures. Wouldn't we just be heading straight into a trap by going to Shang Clan City? Fang Yuan smiled. "If there are only two places in the whole southern border that could accept us, that Shang Clan City would definitely be one of them. Shang Clan might be one of the leaders of the righteous paths, but the Shang Clan City is a place with complete freedom, and also a place where most of the demonic path figures dispose of their goods. If not for that, how could Shang clan be the richest clan in the southern border? Even Wu clan is far inferior to them in this aspect. Bai Ningbing pondered for a while when she heard this. The rumors said that you could buy anything in Shang clan city. Is this really true? Fang Yuan shook his head. The things in the rumors are all talking of the low-level goods. There are too many things in this world that has a lot of demand but no supply. For example, a certain Yanggu. Ha ha ha. Chapter 230, Dual Cultivation. In the dark room, Bai Ningbing let out an annoyed snort. Fang Yuan changed the subject. At this stage, Shang Clan City is the most suitable place for us. There are many stores there from where we can buy the gu worms suitable for us. Although the gu worms we have now are excellent, they don't match with each other. Only with gu worms that can complement each other, can we exhibit stronger fighting prowess and even fight higher ranks. Bai Ningbing was in complete agreement. All excellent gu master would have a set of complementing gu worms. For instance, when Bai Ningbing possessed Northern Dark Ice Soul Physique, the gu worms she had were Ice Blade Gu, Icicle Gu, Water Shield Gu, Blue Bird Ice Coffin Gu, Ice Muscles Gu, Frost Demon Gu. They all belonged to Ice and Water series, and easily complemented each other when mutually paired and used. Now however, Fang and Bai only possessed an assortment of gu worms. If they were to complete a set of complementing gu worms, their fighting prowess would at least double. Fortunately, Fang Yuan had stored large numbers of Bone Spear Gu and Spiral Bone Spear Gu. All these could be sold in Shang Clan City. Even if there were none of these gu, Fang Yuan had Heavenly Essence Treasure Lotus and could use it to produce primeval stones. The first objective in going to Shang Clan City was to lay low. The second objective was to purchase and exchange gu worms. Fang Yuan's third objective, however, wasn't convenient to tell to Bai Ningbing. This involved rock gambling. At a dark corner of a certain rock gambling site, there was a rock hiding a legendary rainbow-colored gu. The gu worms in Fang Yuan's possession were as high as rank 6 Spring-Autumn Cicada, Heavenly Essence Treasure Lotus which was involved with a rank 9 Immortal Venerable, Blood Skull Gu which could change one's aptitude and also Bone Flesh Unity Gu. Leaving aside the Bone Flesh Unity Gu, Blood Skull Gu had already lost its worth because there was almost no blood relative left of Fang Yuan now. Heavenly Essence Treasure Lotus might have excellent results, but it didn't have any advancement prospects since Fang Yuan didn't have its fusion recipe. The higher his cultivation becomes, the lesser the help it would provide. Let's not even talk about Spring-Autumn Cicada. Right now it is still hibernating. If one said to use it, it would be full of danger, but if one does not use it, once it recovered, it would blow up the aperture. It was a ticking time bomb. Spring-Autumn Cicada, Heavenly Essence Treasure Lotus, Blood Skull Gu and Bone Flesh Unity Gu were the most valuable gu in Fang Yuan's possession. In addition, these four all had a common point, they were all involved in assisting with cultivation. How big of a help they were to Fang Yuan? Big, very big. However, their use in battles weren't that obvious. That gu in the Shang Clan City was different in that it was a trump card for battle. With it and some other gu worms to complement it, Fang Yuan could only then be considered to have rebirthed. He would have some confidence in being unrivaled among those at the same rank, recovering some of the bearings of his previous life as one of the big shots of the demonic path. It's a long journey to Shang Clan City, no need to think about this now, you should first refine the Bone Flesh Unity Gu. Fang Yuan stopped this topic. Bai Ningbing felt slightly at ease after knowing Fang Yuan's plan. Having been in contact with Fang Yuan for so long, she was becoming more and more aware of how treacherous and crafty Fang Yuan was. Especially his performance today, such simplicity and honesty even nearly fooled her. Not long ago, she had witnessed how Fang Yuan had refined the Bone Flesh Unity Gu and after connecting all of his behavior, she was beginning to feel a chill in her heart. She reminded herself to be careful and learn from the mistake of that miserable Bai clan leader. If she doesn't have some vigilance against Fang Yuan, who knows, one day she might be sold by Fang Yuan while still counting the money for him. She shook her head to put her mood in check and began to refine the bone-flesh unity Gu. This pair of Gu had strange shapes with one green and another red. Bai Ningbing chose the red one and began pouring her primeval essence into it. This bone-flesh unity Gu had already been refined by Fang Yuan at the very beginning. Now, Fang Yuan removed his imprint from the Gu and cooperated with Bai Ningbing. Bai Ningbing didn't take a lot of time to refine it. The moment she finished refining the Gu, there was a change in bone-flesh unity Gu. This pair of linked jade bracelets suddenly completely dissipated in the air. And almost instantly, there appeared circular marks on Fang Yuan's and Bai Ningbing's wrists. What was different was, the mark that appeared on Fang Yuan's left wrist was green, whereas it appeared on Bai Ningbing's right wrist and was red. A mysterious connection emerged from both Fang and Bai's hearts. This connection allowed Fang Yuan to sense Bai Ningbing, and Bai Ningbing similarly could sense Fang Yuan, as if their blood and flesh were linked and couldn't be divided. This feeling wasn't good, and it made Bai Ningbing feel nauseous, as if she had swallowed a housefly. Fang Yuan's brows also tightly furrowed. This hadn't been mentioned in the scroll left behind by Grey Bone Scholar. Fang Yuan thought about it before being relieved. The Grey Bone Scholar had researched this only in theory and never put it into practice. Not knowing this is very normal. This feeling was only a minor detail. The important thing was the next stage. The two endured the odd feeling and sat cross-legged facing each other on the bed, starting their dual cultivation. They both stretched out their hands, the four palms touching each other. To be on the safe side, the weaker cultivation Fang Yuan experimented it. He took out a portion of his green copper primeval essence and cautiously poured it into Bai Ningbing's aperture. The green and red circular marks suddenly let out bright radiance. The foreign primeval essence, when transferred to Bai Ningbing's aperture, immediately changed to Bai Ningbing's aura. It really worked. Bai Ningbing softly exclaimed in delight. I clearly transferred 10% of my green copper primeval essence, but you only received 3/5 of it, 2/5 of it was lost in conversion. Fang Yuan's observation was even more detailed. Bai Ningbing wasn't surprised though. What's hard to understand? Didn't the scroll say it? This bone-flesh unity Gu can be divided into 5 types of quality depending on how deep the relation between the two refiners is. From low to high, it is divided into fratricidal, friendly relation, indissoluble relation, familial relation, blood-kin relation. She analyzed and continued, if that pair of brother and sister became Gu masters, and refined the blood-flesh unity Gu by themselves, with how deep the relation was between them, I estimate they would obtain the highest quality blood-kin relation. If we had refined it by ourselves, it would definitely be the worst quality fratricidal, considering our relation. These two neutralized each other and we have thus obtained the mid-quality indissoluble relation. The bone-flesh unity Gu referred to a series Gu. Just like how in the Boar Gu, there were black Boar Gu, white Boar Gu, pink Boar Gu and so on. According to what the scroll mentioned, bone-flesh unity Gu contained 5 types of Gu worms. The worst quality was the fratricidal Gu, which converted 10% primeval essence into 1/5 of it. Above it was friendly relation Gu, which converted 10% of primeval essence into 2/5 of it. Indissoluble relation Gu could transfer 3/5, familial relation Gu could transfer 4/5, and the top blood-kin relation Gu could transfer 100% of the primeval essence without any loss in conversion. By relying on his previous life's experience, Fang Yuan had tampered with the recipe at the last moment, obtaining the rank 3 indissoluble relation Gu, which could be considered a pretty good luck. Researching refinement recipe was not easy. It required continuous deductions and experiments along with many Gu worms. Fong Yuan was able to succeed with his tampering. One factor was due to the insight from his experience and another factor was luck. However, he had never liked to rely on luck. This didn't mean he was born a jinx or his luck was bad all the time. Fong Yuan's luck was the same as ordinary people, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Why he didn't like it was because it was a factor which he couldn't control. He was a person who strongly desired being in control. He liked to control the situation, control others and naturally control himself. That's it. Your turn now. Fong Yuan said. On the whole, he was satisfied getting the indissoluble Gu. Bai Ningbing transferred 10% of her snow-silver primeval essence into Fong Yuan's aperture. What happened next was shocking. Just before, when Fong Yuan transferred his dark green primeval essence into Bai Ningbing's aperture, it formed into a green water which was swallowed by the snow-silver primeval sea in just a while, her primeval sea increasing by a bit. Now, when she transferred 10% primeval essence into Fong Yuan's aperture, before her primeval essence had yet to land into his primeval sea, his aperture started shaking. Fong Yuan immediately shouted to stop. This was not a problem in bone-flesh unity Gu, but rather was the problem of his cultivation. He was only at upper stage of rank 1 Gu master and had stored hundreds of bone spear Gu, and now that he was receiving the snow-silver primeval essence, the whole burden was too much to handle for his aperture. Bai Ningbing hesitated. If she continued to transfer the primeval essence now, she might be able to break Fong Yuan's aperture. But even if she broke his aperture, Yang Gu could still be destroyed with one thought from Fong Yuan. She thought for a moment before finally deciding to withdraw her primeval essence. Originally, 10% of silver snow primeval essence was transferred to Fong Yuan's aperture, which should have been converted into 3/5. Now after Bai Ningbing withdrew her primeval essence, only about 1/5 of the converted primeval essence remained. What made Bai Ningbing inwardly sigh was the ability of this bone-flesh unity Gu. Fong Yuan transferred all the bone spear Gu to Bai Ningbing's aperture, and then accepted the snow-silver primeval essence. When this portion of snow primeval essence was in Bai Ningbing's body, it had her aura. Now that it had been transferred into Fong Yuan's aperture, it suddenly shrunk and changed to Fong Yuan's aura. The converted snow-silver primeval essence sank towards the bottom of Fong Yuan's aperture and his green-copper primeval essence could only helplessly float above it. The two existed peacefully, as if this portion of snow-silver primeval essence was birthed by Fong Yuan's aperture. If it was foreign primeval essence that came this close in contact, it would immediately explode and cause damage to the aperture. Hence, the normal primeval essence imparting was like walking on a steel rope, very dangerous and exhausting. Fong Yuan tried moving this portion of the white-silver primeval essence to rush at the aperture walls. Gu masters were divided into 9 ranks of great realms. Each great realms were further divided into 4 small realms: initial stage, middle stage, upper stage and peak stage. Initial stage was light membrane aperture walls, the light was thin and flickering. Middle stage was water membrane aperture walls, the light flowed freely. Upper stage was stone membrane aperture walls, the light was condensed to solid state. Peak stage was crystal membrane aperture walls with ethereal and pure radiance. Fong Yuan was now a rank 1 upper stage, his aperture walls were of stone membrane. However, with one wave of impact from the snow-silver primeval essence, this stone membrane wall actually started shaking violently.